Monday, March 24. Would you please call the roll?
Chair Moll,
Here?
Alder DePula,
Here.
Mr. Homburg,
Here.
Mr. Chapman,
Here.
Mr. Stein,
Here.
Mr. Grice, Ms. Fox is excused, and we're still waiting on Ms. Fallon.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 10th, 2025?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Have a
Second.
second. Any changes, corrections, additions? No? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. I'm going to switch the order of business tonight and go with new business first, given that the unfinished business is likely to take considerably longer. So I want to go to 7A. But before we do that, is there anyone here to make an appearance this evening who is not on the agenda? Anybody to make an appearance? Anybody online to make an appearance? Seeing none? Okay, we'll close the appearance section. And now we'll go to number 7A, public hearing on the request of Java Abilities represented by Angus Young for approval of a zoning permit for a coffee shop at 5734 Monona Drive, case number 2-012-2025. If those of you that are here for Java Abilities, are they online or?
We've got one member online. I think we may. Do we have folks in the room as well? Yes.
Okay, so you should come up to the mics up here. Sorry, gentlemen. So that we can make sure we capture everything. And as you get up to the mics, if you could, A, speak into the mics, and B, start by introducing yourself.
Good evening, I'm Tim McDonald,
From?
Cottage Grove
Okay,
with Java Abilities.
okay.
Mary Kay Clark with both Achieve Abilities, a local business in Monona, and Java Abilities.
I'm Ben Thomas with Madison, in Madison. I'm going to do general managing for Java Abilities.
Great, thank you. So the floor is yours during the public hearing portion, and you're welcome to present to us. We know that we've gotten a packet, but for our public, as well as for those of us on the commission, we'd love it if you could just walk through your proposal a little.
Yeah, I mean,
And if you'd like to.
kind of new to
pull the
this, so I
slides
guess
up.
you want our mission statement or what our proposal is?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
Yeah,
The coffee shop slash cafe is going to be Java Abilities. The abilities part is we're going to employ people with disabilities. Half the people or more will have disabilities that work there. Not only is it going to be a job for them, but it's also training. When we hire somebody with disabilities, our mission and our goal is to teach them to bus tables, work the cash register, cook, do the bank deposit, stuff like that. There's just a lack of, I have a son, he's 23 with Down syndrome. When young adults leave high school, there's just a gap of employment opportunities and even less training opportunities. And that's where this kind of dovetails into that. I've been involved with, I started the Madison Area Down Syndrome Society, was president of that. Been on Gigi's board of directors. They're a Down Syndrome Achievement Center. Coach Special Olympics, multiple sports. And my son he's 23, and now he's in that gap that he needs the training. And so this is the next step in that.
great, thank you.
So I'm Mary Kay, co-partner with Tim in this wonderful adventure, and I'm the owner of Achieve Abilities. We're located in the Monona Center. We have approximately 75 employees clients that we have over 50 employees, and we are in businesses all over Dane County. And Tim shared a bit about this gap, but our general manager, Tim, and myself, we've long held this vision to have a coffee shop, cafe, to employ individuals with disabilities in something like this. So we're really proud to finally be at this stage And we joined the Monona East Side Businessmen's Club to get in the resource guide. And we've already have received so many likes and followers, and so the community is totally embracing this. And I think we have an ideal location, and it's about a block from our office, so we're also very excited about that. So thank you for this opportunity.
Been here. Worked, my family owned a deli up in Wausau, and I managed that for quite a few years. Worked in quite a few restaurants and cafes and coffee shops, and worked with individuals with disabilities for about 15 years. So I think this would be a great fit.
If you could, pull up the slides. Again, if you could just walk through what your,
I think we're going to have Jeff do that. I
Okay.
think he's on
He's
remotely.
online.
okay,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yep, I'm here.
Great, Jeff, welcome.
I'm just pulling up the slides, and we can kind of go through order. Can you see that, Jeff?
Yes, I can now. Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you. If you could just walk through the proposal overall and what your intentions are around the site itself, that would be terrific.
Sure, I can do that. So our project, our site is the existing building you see there in red. It was a restaurant at one point, and last use was a yoga studio. So there is a couple things. So the building's been vacant for some time now. I'm not exactly sure the length of that time. So the goal is to repurpose it or turn it into a coffee shop, as Tim and Mary Kay mentioned. The plant, it's about 2,000 square feet, so we would be renovating the interior to include a full kitchen, and again, coffee shop. There's an existing, or what was an old patio at one point, and you can also see on the east and north ends of the building, there was what was formerly a drive-through. So part of our proposal is to revitalize that drive-through, so we're going to reopen that drive-through so it comes around the north side of the building and exits back out onto Monona Drive. And the existing patio area, we'd be planning to remove the existing concrete slab that is there and replace it with a slightly larger outdoor patio. And then the probably other major thing to mention, part of the existing parking lot just to the north of it, you can see there what was a drop off of some sort. So we will be utilizing that as the main entry as well. So minor, and I guess one more thing to add, there is some minor work being done to the exterior of the building just to make it look a little nicer. So we'll be painting and adding some smaller canopies over a walk-up window and the drive-up area.
Okay, thank you. Anything else that you guys would like to add before I close the public hearing portion and move to consideration of action?
Well, Jeff mentioned the entrance point there. I think that would be for people that had called in orders for pickup. For the drive-through, they would go around the perimeter of the back, which would alleviate any backup of traffic out to Monona Drive. We're hoping that there's that much business that, anyway, so that they would line up inside the parking lot and around the back of the perimeter to the drive-through window.
Okay, so on the southern edge, as you're pointing out on the cursor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of leads, enters from the west, and then heads south, and then up to the north, sort of along the eastern perimeter there.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else at the public hearing that you'd like to say before we close the public hearing? Okay. then we'll close the public hearing. And we will move to 7B, consideration of action on the request by Java Abilities represented by Angus Young for approval of a zoning permit for a coffee shop at 5734 Monona Drive, case number 2-012-2025. Doug?
Thank you. So the request this evening is a zoning permit for a new cafe, the former Mala Yoga Center, 5734 Monona Drive. The zoning permit is required for the new use, the building modifications, and because the building has been vacant for more than 6 months. As mentioned, the plan here is for a cafe serving coffee and food while fostering community connection and inclusivity by employing adults with disabilities. Proposed business hours are 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. with extended hours possible during the summer. And it's expected that Java Ability will employ 12 staff, and the applicant is seeking to improve the existing site to use the former drive-through as well. The site at 5734 Monona Drive is part of the retail business zoning district, and the land use is designated in the city's comprehensive plan as commercial in both the existing and the future land use. The adjacent uses here, you have Woodland Park to the south, multifamily residential to the east, retail commercial uses to both the north and the west. And this building is vacant, most recently occupied by Mala Yoga. Parking and site circulation, standards for that for restaurants and cafes shall provide 1 stall for every 3 seats based on capacity design, or 1 seat for every 25 square feet of gross floor area when there's no design layout provided. Project plans indicate a capacity of 35 patrons, necessitating 12 parking stalls. 26 stalls will be provided, including 2 ADA stalls. 3 stalls will be reserved for pickup orders, and it's just worth noting the existing parking area is in poor condition and in need of restriping as well. Vehicle access from the site will be from a single curb cut along Monona Drive, providing access to the adjacent commercial building to the north as well. And of note here is that the applicant does intend to restore the existing drive-through lane that would head in a counterclockwise direction along the north side of the building. And some of that is currently grass in its existing condition. Improvements will be made to the parking area, drive-through, as well as to the building itself. New curb will be installed adjacent to the building along the drive-through lane, and a new concrete patio area for the outdoor dining will replace the existing patio as well. As mentioned, one of the items listed in the staff report is the drive-through queuing and the potential to back up onto Monona Drive. The site civil plans do show kind of that entry heading south and sort of moving through the extent of the parking area so that it can limit the potential for backup there as well. As far as landscaping, there is a submitted landscaping plan that includes 3 New Horizon hybrid elm canopy trees, numerous shrubs for screening the parking area, and foundation plantings, and it does exceed the landscape points that are needed. And again, this is all sort of improving the exterior of the building, the full extent of the plans that are proposed here. One point of note is that this does increase the amount of impervious surface, reduces the green space. The site is already below the typical standard of 30% open green space, and the addition of the drive-through would make that about 16% and just under 3,000 square feet. So certainly something worth discussing. The fact that they do exceed the landscaping points may be a factor that is considered in that discussion as well. Building improvements will include exterior paint, a small canopy for the existing drive-through window, as well as the pickup window on the south facade with new sliding window as well. The concrete patio improvements, as well as dumpster enclosure improvements and repairs made to the fencing as well, which would be along the eastern boundary. A lighting plan was submitted. Just of note, that was only for the existing fixtures, for the new fixtures. It's recommended that be included or updated to include existing. The northeast light pole will be remaining. The light pole at the southern end of the lot is not in use, and it's recommended that that be removed because just the base is there right now. Signage was not included, but it's expected they can work with city staff on that. The plans were shared with department heads for review and comment. There was some feedback from the Public Works project manager included, some about the curb and gutter as well as the stop signs. This was also shared just for discussion with the city's engineer at Veerbecker, the consulting engineer, just for some discussion about the drive-through and sort of the existing condition and improvements that would be needed there. My understanding, and I see that he's on the line, not to put him on the spot, but my understanding is that the proposal is effectively grandfathered in just because of the age of when the drive-through was previously existing. And so this does not sort of necessitate the additional stormwater and is not reviewed under new standards effectively for that. So with that, the recommendation is that the commission discuss this. If they would like to approve this, then suggested finding of fact and conditions of approval are included in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Terrific. Before I open it up to the commission, I'd just like to say I'm thrilled that this building is if approved, would be utilized. And I think we can all say that we're desperate for another coffee shop in Monona. So that too, and of course, given your mission, it's pretty exciting too. Not only that it's down the street, but that Gigi's, even though it's Madison, we still consider Monona Drive there to be part of our.
And there will be a meeting room
Yeah.
in the coffee shop, too.
Yeah, correct. Great. Terrific. With that, I'm going to start at down at this end. Chris, do you want to go ahead?
I think it's a great use for the site and the building. Little history on that, it was originally built as a Taco Bell, and we had a lot of issues here with that drive-through. And once Taco Bell left, they said we're not going to allow a drive-through on that building again just because of the sheer volume of traffic. I don't see this use as a Taco Bell volume. I'm not saying that, but that's why it was required to be abandoned and why it's grass back there. I think at that time, Monona Drive hadn't been rebuilt yet either, so there was no stoplight there. So it was just a traffic nightmare with Taco Bell right there with the drive-through. I think this is a great use for it. I think the drive-through will be fine. I think the way it's oriented on site, you've got queuing for probably 10, 12 cars, and I don't see 10 people sitting in line to get a coffee. I think your biggest problem will be getting back out if you've got left turners, because you've probably got room for 2, 3 cars after the drive-through, and then you're going to back up with that stoplight if somebody's trying to turn left. So that'll be the hardest part, getting out, but it'll back up to your site. The only issue will be if it becomes a continual issue, it would affect the property to your north, because that's their access. So I agree with Brad Brunn's suggestion. There would be a stop sign. People coming through your drive-through would be a stop sign right where they hit that shared driveway, so that that shared driveway would have the right-of-way to, otherwise they wouldn't access their site. As far as the green space goes, we made exceptions for a lot of properties along Monona Drive when we widened Monona Drive, and this is one of the properties that got hit. And so when we widened it, we created that deficient green space. So I suggest we put that in the finding of fact too, that it's not just what it's at now, but that we had done that to be able to widen Monona Drive and put in our sidewalks. And that's what took some of the green space out of here. Backing right up or butting up to Woodland Park, I just, when you go there, it doesn't feel like it's too small. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a nice landscape plan. I like the landscape plan you've put together. You're shading the headlights from Monona Drive, but it's also the Miss Kim lilac and the daylilies. There'll be a lot of color along Monona Drive, and I think that'll help the site. The site's run down. Let's be honest, it's very run down. It hasn't been taken care of for a while. It needs this. This would be great. One of the staff recommendations is repair and striping of the parking lot. Do you know to what extent you're planning on repairing the parking lot?
We haven't gotten estimates back yet. We have contractors lined up. We just didn't want to take the next step till we get the approval. But we're going to look at all options.
Yeah. The reason I ask, it needs more than just striping.
It does.
You've been there and seen it.
Yeah. It needs more than just sealing too. There's some
Yeah.
potholes
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
whatever they call it, turtle back or something, turtle
That's fine.
something. So yeah, we're going to address that.
All right, because I know it's one of the conditions that you work that out with staff, but I just wanted to make the point that it's more than just striping and a seal coat.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I think it's a great fit for Monona, and I wish you the best of luck.
Great. Thank you. Corey?
I ditto, I guess. I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's a great use. I'm not concerned about the green space, and the park is right there, and your landscape plan is beautiful, so. The two questions that I did have, the lighting that you talk about on the patio, that's a nice idea, but if you're only open till 2, I don't know that you even need it, but maybe, is it something you're thinking that you might have some evening hours once in a while, or maybe move to that in the future?
Yeah, we've just seen other coffee shops that have the lighting, even though that we're not open during those. It's kind of like a lit sign. I mean, it'll show it off in the evening when we're not there. But yeah, it wasn't a priority, but we want to make sure we submitted the photo electric plan and the lighting submittal.
So would they turn off at any time, or would they just be on all
Yeah, I
the
think
time?
we'd put them on a timer or a photo cell
Okay.
for a certain period of time.
Okay, yeah, and I think there's already a condition in there about the lighting, because there are some residences that would be overlooking, above Diane's Drapery, that would be overlooking that patio, so if it's too bright and they're on all the time, that might bother them.
Yeah.
And then, did you plan to put in a bike rack, or have the owner put in a bike rack?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a bike rider,
okay.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Okay, because I think that's
That would
a
be great, yeah.
place that would really get some bike traffic.
I just wanted to add, our short-term goal, of course, is the daytime hours, but I think it would be a midterm goal in the summer to be open in the evenings, and some of our connections are already talking about like a date night for individuals with disabilities to get together and meet each other, and so I think in the summertime there could be, activity on the patio in the evenings. So.
Okay. And that's all I have, but it's great.
I just want to point out that this time of year, it's also very dark until like 7:30 or 8 in the morning, so depending on how early, they might need the lights in the morning. Okay, John?
I would second Nancy's comments and the other comments that we've heard. I think it's absolutely great that you're going in there. Can you tell me, it's really not meaningful, but do you own the building now, or are you just
No.
a tenant? Okay.
It's kind of a long story, we're leasing it out, but the short answer is we want to buy it.
Okay.
And we're negotiating with the owner. He wants to hold it for his son.
Okay.
The daughter thinks that he should sell it and not hold it for the son, but it might be a family
Okay.
negotiation. But we would love to.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have a 10-year lease on it. So it's
10-year lease.
Yeah, so it's 3 years at a certain rate, and then years 4 through 7 it would increase,
Okay.
and then 7 through 10.
Okay, thanks. I think the staff comments, I think one of the ones that I would say is, in a positive way, I hope you do have drive-through issues, that there are 10 cars
Yeah,
backed up, to be honest. And I did have a green space concern. I mean, you're overparked so you could lose parking to create green space. But I do appreciate Chris's historical view, which then makes me not think that the green space is nearly as important. Good luck.
Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful use for that space, and it's nice to see willingness and see the future of the space to invest what you're doing with it. And I would consider, Chris's comment with green space being apropos about why you're not meeting that. I love the idea of a bike rack. Is that apple tree going away? It kind of conflicts with the landscape plan.
Where's the apple tree?
You don't know where the apple tree is?
So it might be gone already. Is it in the back against the fence?
Yeah, it's in the corner, the southeast corner of the lot.
Oh, okay, that's still there.
Yeah. You have a tree in your landscape plan but maybe you can squeak in both, because
Yeah,
that's not really a canopy tree, but I was just curious. So, no, I think it's great, and I don't have a lot more to add. So.
Okay. Patrick?
Not much to add. Concur with everyone else's comments on the commission. Happy to have you here. You know, originally I was just concerned, but the only slight concern I have is how wide that drive-through is against that building. So because I haven't actually physically driven through it, I'm assuming that it's wider than it appears on the satellite image. And I'm just trying to think of like people potentially hitting the building next door to it without any sort of buffer. So I don't know if that was thought about at all. I don't know. So,
Tim and I have both driven through it.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It, you know, I understand and appreciate your concern, but it is manageable.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it just looked really tight from the satellite view. So anyway, otherwise, grateful for you putting this project together.
Yeah. Brenda?
I will add that I'm very glad that you're expanding operations here in Monona. My father-in-law has late-stage Alzheimer's, and I had worked closely when he was in earlier stage of the disease with Achievabilities and the supports that you provide to the community. So I think that you're an essential service to community-based care. And out of curiosity, this doesn't inform anything about the perspective on it, but when we were working on supportive employment placement for my father-in-law, I was thinking about that full supportive employment placement. So when you're thinking about the 12 folks that would be working there, what would be perhaps the ratio between, staff that are there in a supportive employment placement versus balance of staff supporting folks who are in supportive employment? People who are recipients of services from.
Yeah, we're thinking
Achievabilities.
50%.
50/50?
Yep.
Okay. So it would provide kind of like a one-to-one full supportive employment for, that would be great. I'm very glad to see that you guys are thinking about doing this. Now, the building that you're in, your office will probably be somewhere else at some other point in time when the other development project may move forward. Would that affect things for you?
No, it shouldn't. We've actually taken on more space there. We have suites 120, 124, 136, and 156, all in the Monona Center. And, we love the space. We wish it wouldn't go away, but I understand that is in the future. We have a lot of people that have gotten their residences in Monona, so they all hope to stay in Monona. So when we do have to relocate, looking in Monona will be our first choice for relocation opportunities. But coffee shop will stay, for at least 10 years. We hope. We're hopeful. When it was a Taco Bell, I just want to add, it was my sister's favorite Taco Bell. So it has some sentimental value to me, too.
Maybe she'll want to kick in a little bit.
Two other comments. One is that in terms of, again, this doesn't inform anything about, perspective on recommending this, but in terms of the folks who are perhaps in supportive employment that would be at this location, I know we've got access to the metro line, et cetera. Will these be folks that are currently in our immediate community, or because we've got access to the metro bus, we might be, able to provide employment for folks that might be 20 minutes away, an hour away from this location?
Yep. You wanted to say about Jen's?
I couldn't hear that. What was the
Well, it
question?
was about, in terms of that 50% of staff that are there who are in supportive employment, if those might be staff that are coming from our immediate community or throughout, perhaps the county, because we have access to the metro bus, or people who might still be able to drive to work.
Yeah, my wife's getting bombarded by requests of employment by her friends. Obviously, our circle of friends are people who either have disabilities or have a child or an adult with disabilities. So we're not going to be short on employees. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. But as far as there's going to be job coaches, but there's also just going to be coworkers. So they may have a disability and they may come without a job coach, and they just might be able to do their job uncoached, And then there might be some people. There's a location where we have that pickup window where it's wheelchair accessible for the employee, So that's an opportunity there. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for us to provide work for people with disabilities, and we're excited about it.
All right, last comment was when the prior proposal that had come forward about this location, we had made a number of comments about the fence to the, what was that, the east side of the property? I didn't see that mentioned in the staff comments.
It's mentioned, I believe, the plan for both the dumpster enclosure as well as the fence is to replace boards and sort of get it back in shape. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Okay, I'm sorry that I missed that. But
So what was that on the fence, replacing the fence?
Just boards.
Just boards. My
okay.
understanding is kind of fixing it up. Is
Yeah.
is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to put a coat of paint on it, and that, I think that'll come with the, when we apply for the sign permit, if we can put a logo on that fence, or put a mural on that, like a coffee cup. If you'd see our logo, you would understand, but a coffee cup with a heart in it on that fence, is that considered part of the sign? I think that's a future discussion.
It's a future discussion.
But that fence, it does need a little, more than a little TLC, and we're prepared to do that.
That's great.
Yep.
And I'd be the one, you can work with me offline for the
Okay.
the signage, and we can talk about that for sure. Yeah.
when
Hey.
would you hope to be operating by, if you had your way?
Excuse
How
me?
soon, when would you hope to be operating by if you had your way?
May.
By May. Great.
Great.
Thank you so much for bringing this forward. I think this is great for the community.
Yeah, I would just, Brendan obviously just mentioned it, but I would just, was going to mention, you know, we just started Madison Metro service on Monona Drive, stopping on Monona Drive, as well as around town on March 3rd. So, so access via bus and also for paratransit, for those people that qualify for paratransit, is much better than it used to be.
I wanted to add, one of our current staff members has a disability and rides the bus, and anyway, he is our cleaner, but he was somebody that we hired, and he's thrilled to have the bus stopping across the street, so that's just been a huge benefit. So,
Great.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion? Chris?
I have two questions first. Doug, you have on your condition 8 that light base should be removed. I'm assuming there's a conduit coming from the building there. If they want to kind of preserve that, would you feel it's be okay if they just straighten it up and clean it up, paint it up, if they want to maintain that as an area for perhaps in the future they need electricity there? There's a conduit going to that base right now.
I think that makes total sense. Yeah,
So it'd
it's
be-
more of a cleanup than a.
It'd be to your satisfaction what they do.
Yes.
So I changed that. And then addressing that drive-through, we didn't talk about it, but on the north side, you're like tight to the property line. They had almost, what would I call it, almost like a guardrail along that north side that's kind of in disarray. So perhaps they could fix that instead of putting a curb in there. I mean, either way, they're protecting the property to the north, correct? So I would probably put in a condition that they again protect it to staff satisfaction, which could be repairing what's there or putting a curb into something so cars aren't banging into the neighbor's property. Okay, with that, I would move approval with finding of fact as written by staff, but add in for the reduction of green spaces related to the restoration of the former drive-through area and the reconstruction of Monona Drive. And then condition 8 will just say that the utility pole base shall be repaired or removed with final approval by staff. Condition 10, that the building and site to the north be protected from the drive-through traffic with final approval by staff. And then condition 11, that there's a bike rack with final approval by staff.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other, all
Do
those
you-
in favor?
Do you have any questions with
Yeah.
everything? With conditions?
No, I mean, we have a lot of questions. I don't know if we have,
But for
where do
us-
we start? But
for-
it's just like, similar to that electrical base that just gets approved by you, bike rack gets approved. You know, we also did some diving with the electric bike. If the city of Madison or city of Monona puts electric bike stand in to rent electric bikes like they do here
B-Cycle, and they're a totally different entity.
over at the park. you know, where you look at that electrical outlet, where the footing for the light is, you know, I mean, is that, I'm just thinking long-term, like I said, I don't want to take too much of your time, but, I mean, there's electrical there, if we're going to energize a rack with electric bicycles.
You can work all that out with staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to,
okay.
you don't have to come back here unless you really want to.
I'm good with this.
Great. Terrific. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. Again, we look forward to
Welcome.
driving through, stopping by, seeing progress.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to 7C, public hearing on the request by El Vaquero LLC for approval of a zoning permit for a new restaurant use at 2407 West Broadway, case number 2-010-2025. If you could come up to the front of the room and the microphones.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And this is your opportunity to explain to the commission your intentions around this approval.
Well, thank you. My name is Eric. This is my mom right here.
My name is Patricia. Is my son.
And back there, oh, he's sitting back there, but that's my dad. So we right now run a family business. It's a restaurant. It's on the east side of Madison, right by East Washington. It's called Vaquero Mexican Grill. We're looking to expand. We found this location here on West Broadway. From what I know, I think it used to be a Subway. When they left, they did kind of take everything with them, so it's kind of empty space. So we have to do some renovations. But when we were going through that, I found out that we had to apply for this permit. So that's what we're hoping to do. We are going to open a restaurant, hopefully. If that is, the restaurant we have is a fast casual service. So people come up to the counter, we serve them their food, they pay, they sit down. A lot of times it's, I would say 50-50. Some dine in, some kind of get to go. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're hoping to do with this.
Okay, great. Anybody else here to speak on the public hearing portion of this particular application? Okay, then we will close the public hearing and move to 7D, which would be consideration of action on the request by El Vaquero LLC for approval of a zoning permit for a new restaurant use at 2407 West Broadway, case number 2-010-2025. Doug?
Thank you. So the request this evening is for a zoning permit for a new restaurant at 2407 West Broadway. This would be a Mexican grill location similar to the Vaquero restaurant at 3904 East Washington. Looking to locate here in Monona as well. So the location would have 3 to 5 employees during a peak shift and expects 50 to 80 visitors daily. The operating hours would be about 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and interior building modifications would include the addition of a kitchen hood vent, several sinks, as well as a grease trap. The fact that this has been vacant for greater than 6 months necessitates the zoning permit review, and within this zoning district, the Community Design District, that review is done by the Plan Commission. The comprehensive plan has Southtown, the Southtown Mall area, characterized as having big box retailers, smaller national retail and restaurant businesses, and this property is within the current and future land use maps outlined as a commercial use. As far as parking, the restaurant is planned to have 20 seats, which would necessitate 7 parking stalls, the same as the previous use in terms of the standards that it's kept to. There are 26 parking stalls in front of this retail center, including 2 ADA accessible, and this is shared between the tenants. On a site visit, it appears that This will be ample. The parking lot is in good condition, and of course, there's additional parking elsewhere at Southtown Mall, so that's not anticipated to be an issue. No exterior modifications are proposed, just interior, as was already mentioned. The landscaping, there's a newly constructed tree island, canopy tree at the southern end of the parking lot, associated with the improvements we saw recently for Michael's and Five Below, and the landscaping is in good condition. The hours of operation appear complementary to those others within the site, and no signage is included here, but there is a comprehensive sign plan, so we expect the applicant to work with staff to have that reviewed administratively. Recommendation is approval with 4 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report. That does include the grease trap plan, which is pretty typical now. That request had come in a couple uses ago for restaurant use. So I just used that same language, but did want to highlight that for the commission. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we're going to start at this end. Brendan?
You guys have a great restaurant. This will mean it's closer to home. So thanks for joining our community here. I think it's a great use of the space. Any other comment?
Thank you. Good. Patrick?
Same thing. The restaurant on East Wash is fantastic. Love the mole and the chicharron. I can't remember which dish that is, but it's like anyway. Fantastic restaurant. Be great.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's great. No, I'm really excited to eat there, so.
Thank you again.
No comment.
John?
You're making me hungry. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no comments.
Thank
Agreed,
you.
great use. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't eaten there yet, but I've had dozens of friends say, you gotta go there, you gotta go there.
You have to go now.
Yeah. With the family restaurant, my husband, he's the chef, he's the manager, and I help for everything. And my other son, he's up to try the food in another location in the Vaquero. Everything is fresh, everything is very good. We love our restaurant. Y amamos servirle al cliente.
Yeah, we love to serve our customers, so we hope to do the same here.
Well,
That's great, that's great. Well, again, welcome, and I will take a motion.
Move approval with conditions as written by staff.
Second.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
We are approved.
Thank you
Again,
so much.
welcome to
Thank
Winona.
you.
Welcome to Winona. We're glad you're going to be here.
Okay. All right, thank you. And for further questions, speak to you.
Yes, yeah,
Thank
happy
you so
to
much.
help.
Appreciate it. ¿Tienes un blog?
Sí, ya les comentaste que vamos a instalar campana y zombie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
We wait for try the food in the open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to go back to unfinished business. Number 6A, public hearing for DSI Real Estate Group LLC on the request of approval of a general development plan, GDP, for the site located at 100-300 River Place for a multifamily development, case number 2-026-2024. Welcome back.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back. We're a little short-staffed tonight, so you'll have to bear with me and have me do the presentation for a change. But I think most of you are really familiar with the project, so I will kind of just go through the presentation quickly so we can get to discussion a little bit quicker. Yeah, so here's our first slide. This is the new version of the building. You can see that there's been substantial changes that we can talk about in a little bit more detail further on in the presentation. We're glad to be here. We think this is a great project, great opportunity to bring some much-needed residential presence in that area, while at the same time reusing the land from what is now increasingly unprofitable and obsolete use. Next slide. This was the original phase one that we brought in. It hasn't changed much. You can see that the new building is the T-shaped building to the north, and the current second office building is shown. That will stay up until such time as we're ready to start with phase two. Next slide. This is phase 2. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the changes we made here, but you can see that, that we're utilizing the entire site, again, to bring that residential to the area. And we look forward to discussing that a little bit more. We anticipate that when the time comes to actually do the PIP for the phase 2, that there'll be some additional conversation and analytics based on how the first phase has been performing, as well as any other changes in the surrounding area. Next slide. So JLA, I think, did a great job with the changes to this building, and I think also the input we got from this group actually led us to a very good place. I think, what was the word? It was brutal. I don't feel like it's brutal anymore. I feel like it's much more harmonic with the waterfront. You can see we've softened the palette, we've brought the setbacks in, we've increased the articulation, and even added some wood accents in the corners and midsection. We did, I'm sorry, next slide. This back remained otherwise unchanged as far as the amenity deck and the interaction with the boardwalk. We think it'll be a great use for that, especially with the townhome units that are sidewalk height on the back and the front of the building. That'll all have access directly onto the sidewalk and the boardwalk. The unit count is down on this building by 4 or 5, but that was really caused by setting back and making those balconies a little bigger. We can talk about that shortly. Next slide. I want to point out on this slide again that those individual entries go right into 2-floor townhome units, which we are really excited about. They can also be accessed by the interior of the building. And you can also see now a pedestrian sidewalk all along River Place, whereas right now there is no sidewalk there whatsoever. And then to the right, you can see the entry that goes down to the boardwalk has been enhanced as well. Thank you. Next slide. This just gives you a little bit of an idea of that second building. I can share that we took a story off of that building, as well as increased the parking to an additional level on the interior, both in terms of just trying to get the density down per your input last time we were here, as well as the helping that parking ratio. Next slide. This gives a nice rendering that shows both buildings when completed, and then the Country Inn Suites in the foreground to the right. Again, we're really playing to that boardwalk, and we're looking forward to really continuing that on for another generation. Next. I'm not really sure why we had 2 slides in there, but there it is. There's another picture of it showing both buildings. The next slide talks about our materials, and we have a representative from JLA with the actual samples here today, but you can see what we've got, and I think if you have questions on that, we can go into it in great detail, but you can see that we've gotten away from that more harsh kind of flat brick, and now we're into more natural stone, again, all with thinking about making it appropriate for the waterfront and that area. Softening it up a little bit. So, what changes did we make? Well, we changed the open space and landscape. We've enhanced it. We've increased the parking, and have taken quite a bit of time to make sure that we feel comfortable that we've got it sufficiently parked. Our building architecture, of course, we'll talk about, but you can see from this rendering again, we've set back quite a bit from the 3rd and the top floor, which lost us some units, but we think it's really a nice look, and I think it'll function pretty well. And the materials are a big upgrade as well. Our density is down per your suggestion as well. And then the last thing to talk about is commercial, which we have not included in this. We really feel strongly that it's just not a good place for commercial, and nor do we really have the margin in this project to take on that risk. So, this is the concept plan as it was submitted. You can see that our green space or open space was limited on the south edge, as well as along the south and slightly to the east. We've changed that now. You can see now we've opened up some green space to the south of that building, as well as did some further enhancements along the edge, both in terms of the layout as well as the landscape plan. So the overall site plan has been revised to increase the landscape area to 26%. That's 3 or 4 points higher than it is right now, so it's actually, you know, an improvement from its current use. And then I would also point out that we've done some enhancements on the boardwalk and the landscape plan in general that hopefully will make up for that shortfall. And then also to point out that the actual cove there is something that we constructed about 30 years ago, and we've maintained and will continue to maintain it in perpetuity at our cost. So we feel like that also should come into, you know, analyzing the open space requirement. Next slide. I won't talk too much about our landscape plan. I have a poetic summary of it from Olson Toon that talks about splashes and waters and a whole bunch of fun things like that, but that's kind of beyond me. But I think we've done everything that you've asked us to with more native plants and to soften it up pretty substantially. Next slide. Parking is an interesting point. We've improved it now up to the 1.43 per unit. I've got quite a bit of analytics on this in comparison to our project up in Grand View, up by the Great Dane East across the road. It's a very comparable project, and I can share with you that that this is actually parked about identically, and we have had no functional problem with that up there. And so we feel very comfortable that we've got enough parking for this use. But we can talk about it in more detail, of course. Next slide. This is the original design, which, you know, obviously there were a lot of comments about the red. We did not keep the red, we got rid of it, but you can see where we started. And I think, you know, with your guys' input, we really have improved it to the next slide, that you can see just the huge difference, and I think it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful building. Obviously, we've already talked about the step backs and the articulation and the materials, and then, oh, even on there, bullet point, no red. So, okay. And then the next slide, please. Density is pretty self-explanatory. We brought the unit count down substantially, both in terms of stepping back the first building, as well as taking an entire floor off the second building. We feel that's appropriate. We think it feels about right, and we appreciate your input on that. Next slide. The commercial uses. Yeah, this slide is out of date. This is one from a few months ago, but I can share with you that we've done a little bit more analytics that we can talk about tonight, both in terms of the amount of retail space that's available in Monona, as well as, you know, the challenges for this particular site as far as visibility and access, as well as parking. More commercial means more of a parking issue. So we can talk about that in more detail, but we are sitting on a little over 6,000 square feet of vacant space to the south of the Cove currently. And of course, we've got the vacant lot across the street. The Cost Cutters across Monona Drive is vacant as of right now as well. We're happy to see a new tenant coming in to the north, but really along that corridor, the commercial spaces that are there now that are thriving are either on the main boulevard or have good visibility, or both. And this site really doesn't have either, in our opinion. So, okay, next slide. And that is it. I don't want to take as little time with this as we can, although I want to make sure I'm covering everything that you guys want to cover. I figured our time would be better spent in discussion. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on the public hearing portion of this proposal this evening? Okay, we will close the public hearing and move to number 6B, consideration of action for DSI Real Estate Group LLC on the request for approval of the general development plan for the site located at 100-300 River Place for multifamily development, case number 2-026-2024. Right?
Thank you. The request this evening is for the formal consideration of the general development plan for the site at 100-300 River Place. Proposal includes the phased demolition of the existing office buildings, as well as phased construction of 2 multifamily residential buildings. The site is just over 3 acres in site, and the conceptual plans call for a 7-story, 125-unit building in Phase 1, and a 6-story, 102-unit building in Phase 2. The buildings feature ground floor activation, integration with the Riverwalk, tenant amenities, including an outdoor pool, plaza deck, fitness center, community room, pet wash, tenant storage, as well as at-grade and covered parking. The applicant seeks approval this evening of the general development plan, as well as the Phase 1 precise implementation plan, which will be considered this evening as well. The zoning for the site is Community Design District, and this allows for the Planned Community Development Framework, PCD. PCD does offer greater flexibility given the scale of the proposal as well as the phased approach to the project. The comprehensive plan does classify this property as commercial use in both the current and future land use maps. The definition of that per the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission is land used for retail, service, commercial, and office uses. This was discussed during the November 2024 pre-hearing. There was materials in there about the application about the 30-year-old office building that are now Class C in their nature, challenges that come with that, the need for the repositioning, which subsequently led to this proposal. The applicant does intend to keep the office space to the south, which is also where their offices are located, and so they see this as an opportunity to reposition across the phased proposal. The latest materials do explain and do discuss that they looked into the feasibility of the commercial element. This was a large discussion during the pre-hearing, and they deemed it not to be feasible due to the additional costs, parking demands, and the adjacent commercial vacancies, which were also shown here in the application. The intent here instead is to offer walkable residential units which can support the adjacent commercial that is also nearby and accessible by foot. In terms of the 2016 comprehensive plan, it does discuss some of the demographic challenges for Monona, including the aging population and empty nester cohort. The variety of units here, although rentals, do offer some variety, especially those of the townhomes, and could appeal to those looking to downsize and remain in the area. As well, within the land use element of the comprehensive plan, it does encourage sustainable redevelopment projects, of which this would be one of those. The site design, typically the city requires that all sites will be required to cover up to 30% of their site in open green space. This has been increased from the current condition, and it's increased in the proposal here for the GDP to 26.8%, and that's from 22.1%. Of note here, the adjacent Yahara Cove Riverwalk, which does provide public access, and as mentioned, the applicant is obligated to maintain in perpetuity as well. So that is excluded, as well as the adjacent sidewalk that's being proposed in the right-of-way along River Place as well. So certainly staff recommends sort of discussing these elements if these, along with the landscaping plan, which we'll get to later, if those elements can sort of offset some of the challenges there that are being brought forward by the lot design. In terms of setbacks, specific standards are not given for this district. Instead, they're looked at sort of on a case-by-case basis. Phase 1 building to the west is close to the north and south property boundaries, but it does offer a decent setback from the western property line and the adjacent commercial tenant. And then additional setbacks are present along the northern facade of the building, and these have been added since the pre-hearing conference. And there are also some more step backs on the 6th floor that do create additional balconies and resulted in the loss of five units. The design of Phase 2 has the building close to the northeast and south property boundaries with the western buffer of the surface parking between. There is the possibility there potentially for more step backs on the western edge of the building, which could help soften the impact of that building. As far as circulation, the applicant plans to use the existing curb cut along River Place to access the site. Additionally, pedestrian circulation is enhanced by the new sidewalk that will also connect to the boardwalk. Staff does suggest discussing the sequencing and phasing of this, as well as the construction, just given the fact that there will be some overlap with the existing commercial building, but also some of the construction staging here could get tricky. So making sure that circulation is maintained, but also parking subsequently as well. Moving on to parking for Phase 1, the applicant now proposes 168 stalls. 128 of those would be covered, 40 of those would be shared surface stalls, sort of the eastern side of Phase 1, western side of Phase 2, and there's an additional 14 on-street stalls that are adjacent to the site along River Place on the southern side of River Place. Of the 128 stalls, these are across 3 levels of wrapped parking at the base of the building, and it does include 2 tandem stalls, which we expect would be for the some of the 2-bed units there. For Phase 2, the applicant proposes an additional 134 covered parking stalls, with 8 of those, an additional 8 being on-street as well. Just of note here, just given sort of the alternate transportation options that could be here, there is a bike parking room shown in the lower level of Phase 1, and Phase 2 also shows bike parking on each level. There's no discussion of electric vehicle charging. Again, while not required by the ordinance, it may be something worth putting in here. Discussion of the parking is certainly expected during this, the GDP consideration. The full allocation of the 40 surface stalls, when accounting for that, Phase 1 has a deficit of 27 stalls, and Phase 2 has a parking deficit of 33.5, leading to a combined, rounding up, a combined deficit of 61 stalls. 22 of those, that does not include 22 on-street parking stalls, and this would be a similar condition should the commission choose to consider as the Besa development that did allow sort of the adjacent street parking to count towards that. In this instance, it's suggested that the lack of commercial within this development could actually help with that, given that the street parking could be used for the residences and that there would not be that overlap with commercial. Again, this site is well served by alternate transportation options. There are 2 metro routes nearby, and Madison Metro will be stopping in Monona, does stop in the city of Monona. And there's also, of course, the option for bike and alternative transportation there. Possibility of shared parking agreement with the pediatric dental adjacent to the west as well, I believe a previous tenant of the applicant. And of course, pretty clearly delineated operating hours, overnight needs for the business, if there's any need for that, possibly as well. And finally, just with the parking standards, the commission has previously seen as an opportunity with the phased approach to this to potentially pick up additional parking later if needed, so that could be something worth discussing. The architecture and massing has been changed and certainly adjusted based on pre-hearing feedback. The materials include a combination of masonry as well as composite siding. Additional masonry has been added, as well as the red exterior accents removed. Enhanced building articulation has been included, as well as the top floor step backs as well. And despite the size and scale of the building, the parapets as well as the articulation do help break the planes of the building up as well. The master plan does include details for Phase 2, the 6-story U-shaped building, and it's expected that the materials articulation will complement Phase 1. The overall number of units has been reduced from the pre-hearing down to 227, which is just under 75 units per acre. And again, given the site challenges regarding the water table, soils, as well as the natural slope, staff feels that it has brought forward a unique design that we have not seen in the city. And certainly, while it would be one of the tallest, they would be the tallest buildings in the city. Location near the Beltline Highway, distance from existing single 2-family neighborhoods. It does seem an appropriate location and sort of set well within the site to do that. It looks like a certified survey map would be needed to sort of consolidate some of the lots here, and it's recommended that this be pursued sort of as soon as reasonably possible. Stormwater plans were reviewed by the city's consulting engineer, and he's on the line this evening. Most likely that will get into more detail with the PIP, but certainly something we can discuss. And again, lighting, landscaping, those plans have been submitted. I have them in the staff report. I plan to go into more detail, certainly during the PIP as well. As far as staff comments, the fire chief did have some feedback. Most of those were about Phase 1 specifically. And then same again with the project manager, Public Works project manager, more details within the PIP as well. So with that, staff recommends discussion from the commission specifically about the shortage of both the green space as well as the parking. But if they choose to approve it, the recommendation is included here with findings of fact and conditions of approval in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Before I open it up to the commission, I just want to say more generally, thank you for responding to our previous feedback. We always like to see that happen. It doesn't always happen, and we're appreciative of that. Second, I just wanted to mention a few things. As somebody who has championed sustainability since my arrival on the city council, I can't help but stare at these big, beautiful, flat roofs and think what a missed opportunity it would be if it didn't have solar on it. So while we don't have a development regulation like Middleton, as an example, to require that, I hope that will seriously be considered. Similarly, around EVs, and third, I would just say that I struggle with taking down buildings that are only 30 years old. And I hope, and I would even go so far as to say that we would expect that those materials would be recycled in some manner or reutilized in some way rather than go to landfill, because those really aren't that old by building standards. And I understand the interest, and I think the development, you've moved a long way, but you may or may not know that as an example, when we did the current and the riverfront development, well, certainly we had more control over that as a municipality, given that we originally owned the property. I think it was 90% of the materials that came out of that 7 acres recycled. It was it's pretty impressive. So I just hate to see that all go to landfill. And with that, I'm going to start in the middle this time around. John? No? You don't want to start? Okay. All right. Rob, do you want to start?
Sure. First off, thank you for the presentation and the reaction to the last meeting and all the changes that were made. Bear with me here so I can somewhat organize where I want to go with this. So there's a lot of discussion about commercial. I've kind of come to terms with the situation over there. I think you make really good points about its location, and the state of commercial space in general is it's not trending in the direction we like, but I could see where a development like this could help support commercial that's already existing in that neighborhood. So I think that there's some potential benefit for that. The 7-story building and being the tallest building in Monona was, again, another thing that was difficult to swallow, but we recently approved a Topgolf, and that is going to be far more impactful and more of a landmark in Monona than this would be. And frankly, this would be a better one to hang your hat on, I think, than 100 or however long, how tall those nets are. So that too I've kind of come to terms with. The parking is something that I think is still concerning. I don't know what that does, if there are major parking issues, what that does to phase 2. What sort of numbers you got to have to make that a possibility if you have to take off another story off of that to make up with parking issues. And that's just, that's somewhat of a concern. I appreciate the comparison to your other property where you use 1 point, it was about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Was that for phase 1 or phase 1 and phase 2 combined?
Well, actually, it's for phase 1 and phase 2 combined. We had, up at Grand Park, we have way too much parking up there. We have almost 30 stalls after almost a year and a half of operation that have still never been used. But we also still have half of our commercial vacant up there. So if you adjust for that, we're at 1.43 operationally at Grant Park. And we've had absolutely no problems at all functionally.
Okay, thank you.
That's, sorry, Nora, but that's also in a neighborhood that we have spent years trying to promote the idea of street parking, because we like street parking. It slows traffic down, it makes everything safer. It also, creates more of a feeling of activity. And so we intentionally have some of our surface lots, actually on the street, on the north edge of that property. And that's worked out really, really well.
Yeah, if you're gonna build super wide roads, we should park them.
Yeah, I agree.
As far as I'm concerned. Moving on to the building. Sorry, this is a huge packet. Cycling through. I'm glad I don't have a paper one this time. I think the buildings come a long ways with the color, the articulation differences, the moving in the top side I think is great. I think the colors are much better. I like the move to natural stone. I think that fits in really well. If I was to give one opinion, is that I still like the idea of the stone carrying up past that second story, which is whatever for my comment from last time. I just think it ties that material to the ground level a little bit more. But that said, I think it looks far better in my opinion than the previous design. But I am a fan of tying that material up, because the stone is really the lasting material. That's what's going to age the best. That's what's going to look better than any other material on there in 50 years from now. If you're looking at rehabbing a building, I'm not sure what the lifespan expectancy is for something like this, but the stone or the brick usually weathers better, in my opinion. So I'm going to stop there. I can pipe up again later if I need to.
Okay. Great. John, do you want to go now, or would you like to be skipped? No? Okay. Corey?
Okay. So, like Rob, I'm coming around to. I was very concerned about not having commercial, but I do understand the points you're making. To Nancy's point about 30 years not being that old for building, I don't have commercial properties, so I don't know what it's like to try to lease out a Class C commercial property. But it makes me wonder about the other buildings that you own. How old are those buildings?
They're a little bit younger, but not by much, probably in the 20s, 20-year-old range.
Okay. So when they hit 30 years, is that going to be, you're going to come back with some additional residential proposals? I mean, it's you don't have to answer that. It's just more of a hypothetical. It's just, I'm thinking about that area there is an area that we do want to have commercial. And in looking at the design that you have, there is the commercial behind and you have to go all the way around. And now there's going to be this even larger building with more parking on the street potentially, which I'm not sure about if that's wide enough. But it seems like it might be a little bit awkward, I guess, is one of the concerns that I do have. I do really like the pedestrian-friendly design that you came back with. I think thinking about how to tie that all together, right now your buildings are on the boardwalk, but they face the front, so you don't even know that the boardwalk is back there. So I really do like the addition of the sidewalk and the connection to let people walk to the commercial spaces and get some Chinese food or whatever. So I think that's great. I really like the townhouse and the mix. So there's some things I really do like about it. At the last meeting, we had talked about having a better sense for what might happen in this area. You know, that's just not something that we have, unfortunately, but having a better sense of what is going to happen in this area in the future would be, you know, we don't have a crystal ball, so it's really difficult to plan for that. But thinking about what our needs as a city are going to be in the future is what we're trying to do right now. And, you know, I do think you're meeting some of those needs with the townhouses and that. But I do have some concerns about the density and the parking. And the street parking there, we had, you know, you had mentioned, Doug, that the Besa site has the street parking, and that's a little bit of a different situation, whereas this does have the commercial around the back, the hotel and the commercial around the back. And I don't know the widths of the roads, and so maybe that's a question that someone else can answer, but I don't know if there's room on this road to do street parking and still have safe circulation around the site. So that's a question that I do have.
Could I address that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That street has been parked on both sides from the building we're talking about taking down right now. If you look at the site plan where it is right now, a lot of that parking is over to the east. That's a little bit farther from the office building. And so for the 25 years of operation there, every weekday, both sides of that street have been parked. And it's not been a problem.
And I would add weekends too, since I used to work at Rutabaga.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always parked there too.
Okay. Let's see. As far as the amenity spaces, you have the patios on each of the buildings, but it didn't look like there was any additional amenity space or patio space down on the ground floor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the decision there?
Well, basically, it was just a decision about where we had room for things. So
Okay.
most of our amenity package for this building, for what you would typically think of, grills, pools, that sort of thing, are up on the deck. There are some additional amenities that, you know, you don't necessarily see in this plan, but our dog, what we call our dog spa, has been very popular in all of our properties, and we've got one of those down on the boardwalk level towards the back. We've got other features like, for bike repairs and that sort of thing, as well as we're trying to promote, unique to this property, some sort of connection to the water, so some storage for kayaks, that sort of thing, so we can play to the water. But, you know, the boardwalk itself is really a nice amenity that gets used a lot. There's so many dogs that get walked past back there already. So we really feel like, you know, we don't have a whole lot of room for, you know, what we might normally program, like, I don't know, like a pickleball court or something like that. But we feel like that, you know, the surrounding area and the boardwalk and the cove in particular is a great amenity, and then the rest of the actual building amenities are up on the top deck.
Would you put in a kayak launch? Is there one already there?
Well, I mean, Rutabaga was there for a long time. Honestly, I don't really know how they launched them. I can't remember, but
They
yeah.
had a
if we-
launch in the back.
What's that?
They had a launch out the back of their
Yeah, we're
store.
certainly open to that, sure.
Because if you're going to have kayak storage, and you have the cove that they can get into the
Makes
lagoon
perfect
there,
sense, sure.
but yeah, I think that would be helpful. Let's see.
Can't just throw them in.
No. Well, you could, but then it would be hard to get in them. Let's see. I was wondering, did you do any analysis of where the sun is going to be? Like, the building's so much taller than where the pool is. I'm just worried that it's going to shade the pool.
Oh, the answer is only, you know, informally through JLA. They take a look at that, but it does face to the south. So we're more concerned really about the shadow to the north, because that has some real functional issues. And ironically, our building up in Grandview is the exact same orientation. So it just makes the north side of the building is always a struggle, making sure it stays clean of ice and snow and that sort of thing. But you know, we're used to it, and we can make it work.
Okay. Let's see. I guess, I will say, that's what I'll say for now, and then we'll see what the other commissioners have to say.
Thank you. Chris?
Oh, okay, so we're just talking GDP right now, so
Yep.
it's the big picture stuff. I'll start, start where Rob started with commercial. I'm getting my head around to this, but I would be extraordinarily protective of the rest of the commercial in this area, because that's why we developed this area. You were part of it when we developed it. So I would not, you never say never, but at this point, I certainly wouldn't support any redevelopment of the stuff on the south of the cove. And just, I disagree with the second half of what Rob said, because we just got a report that showed, and this is a paid consultant, that the vacancy rate in the greater metro Dane County area for commercial is lower than it is on apartments right now. There's been a lot, I think it was 200,000 square feet was rented out this last period, and about 80,000 built, and it really changed the numbers on it. So there is place for commercial, and it is picking up again. So GDP, the big picture item thing we all talked about was parking, right? And too many units, too much density, not enough parking. I opened up this plan set this weekend to look at it, and I thought, oh, heck no. They didn't do enough. They're still way too short of parking. And I felt like that, and I read through it all, and I drove out and looked at the site, and I thought about it some more. And really, I think the condition that Doug started, and I'm going to recommend a little different, sorry about that, language for is 18. And he said, should parking become an issue? I would recommend we just change that. The commission may require more parking, reduced units, or both during the approval of phase 2. That's a little stronger condition. So what you've got with a GDP, you're coming in and I say, I want a GDP that says, okay, I'm locked in. I can have about this many units, and this is about how I'm going to get access and how I'll do it all. And once you get that, that's good. You have that approval. So what I've done is I've strengthened his condition a little bit, since we're all apprehensive about the parking. So it doesn't give you quite the certainty, but you know where the commission's coming from. We want to see that you have enough parking. And you're talking 227 units that have a surface lot of 40 stalls. That's not many. And you know darn well some of your tenants aren't going to pay the money to rent an underground stall. So they're going to use up some of that. That just doesn't leave much for visitors, for drop-offs, for deliveries, for everything. And I think that's where I'm coming from, and I know a lot of the commission's coming from there. So by strengthening that condition, it takes away a little bit of your certainty, but you know where we're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something, if the rest of the commission agrees, I would suggest we do tonight. And it gives us that chance for you to prove it to us.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say. We want it to work. You know?
Absolutely.
And if we get to the time like, oh my gosh, we missed this,
And
we'll want to make those changes.
so when the first building's there and you have a surface lot of 40 stalls, you might be okay, but now we throw the second building on there, is that going to overwhelm that? And we did allow BESA to use some stalls, and good part about having papers, you can actually scale it. And I checked it quick, and it's about a 36-foot face-to-face, which we can park on two sides of. You know, like Dan said, it'll slow traffic down a little bit, but you can park on two sides of a 36 face-to-face. So,
And I could also add, sorry to interrupt, but we own parking right across the street that is greatly underutilized. I counted around 40 stalls on that lot.
well, yeah, that'll come and go, and we don't want to limit that property, but it's a good mix, because a lot of times we need those extra surface stalls. That's visitors at night, and
Right.
most of them come at night, and when those commercial stalls aren't as necessary usually. So that's a really symbiotic relationship that works well. So I think there's possibilities here for parking, but by having a little stronger condition, you've got this GDP that says this is what you're allowed, but we might change our mind a little bit, and here's why.
No objection.
And you know what that is, and I think that's the number one concern for commission, staff, everybody, since you've done this. And other than that, we're talking about, for the GDP, green space. I'm more of an opinion that this is okay, and here's why. You should put me out to pasture. I was here when we approved the buildings they want to tear down.
I built them.
Yeah, I know, I remember. You might have to go out pasture with me.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what we did is that is a big amenity when they decided to make this, and when they decided to maintain it, and this boardwalk and everything, and we gave them, yeah, you can have a lot of credit for this, which is why there's actually less green space existing right now than there will be. But we gave a lot of weight to the fact of the boardwalk, the pond. It might not be somewhere you want to swim, but it is an amenity. It's something people like. It's something to just build this whole area around. So I think it does carry a lot of weight. So I would say for me, I think the green space is good. Do I want a lot of landscaping? Sure, but that's going to be more on the PIP. But so as far as generally, do I think the GDP works with what you've proposed? I think it does. I think it's something I can get my head around and approve tonight. There's going to be more details on the PIP for phase 1, but with those big caveats, that's kind of where I'm at with the GDP. So the unit mix, probably with the caveat of we're not sure of phase 2. The green space I think is great. The parking's, that's still that caveat. The buildings, I would have liked to seen. You've done a lot. Okay, you set back after, what is it, 3 stories? And then set back again? Is that what it is? Is 3 stories and you step back. And I'll like to hear what John has to say, but really the final details of that's going to be more the PIP than right now we're talking about massing and is this 7-story structure appropriate? Rob, I agree that I think the 7 stories works here. It's kind of its own little area here, and I think it's a large enough mass between that and the one next to it that I think the 7-story works here. I wouldn't want to see 7 stories on Monona Drive, but in this particular location, I think it works. It's big. I mean, we're usually 5 stories that are tallest ones, but to solve your parking problem with your density, and does the density work? Yes, but it creates these parking issues that we're going to talk about. And I said it probably 2 or 3 times now, so I'll be quiet so everybody else can finish up. But that's where I stand on the GDP.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any additional comments except those that have already been made by other commissioners. One thing I would call out is that thank you for the quality of your presentation, the way you summarized information and made it clear about how you introduced the changes. I thought you did a really great job in terms of just how information was organized and presented to us, so thank you for that.
Patrick?
To echo Nancy's comments, that flat roof, it's hard to look at those flat roofs and not see some use on them, especially with the advent of solar and our desire in Monona to see more of that, even though, as she said, it's not regulated. I agree with Chris about the parking situation there. I know I've been to, I think you have the development out by the Great Dane and the commercial area that's right over there, the strip mall along the road. And whenever I've been there, parking seems pretty tight actually in that complex there. So I look at this and look at the density and look at how many people are going to be there, and it's hard for me to believe that there's going to be adequate parking. So I think that needs to be addressed. I just don't see that surface lot being adequate. Additionally, I don't really have much else to add. So I think I'll leave it at that.
So, if I could just go back to, you said that your intention is to continue to take care of the lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, spent thousands of hours in that lagoon, for better or for worse. Even when there were, does that mean that you're going to put aerators back in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a whole series of aerators. In fact, we just upgraded that system, I want to say it was 5 years ago, but, time flies anymore. But we went to more of an air-induced one as opposed to you might remember we used to have these big rocks out there with super dangerous propellers on them.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all gone, but we have gone to an air system. So we have 2 different air pumps. They're pumping aeration through there, and then as well as our fountains that are in there. But yeah, that's all a reoccurring program.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
And that's all paid by the buildings from, or our offices are, through the hotel and our 2 properties. And like this building would be the last one that contributes to the maintenance of the code.
Okay. Any, John?
Thanks for letting me go this late.
Sure.
I have some strong issues with the project as it's proposed. And I think this project may illustrate how archaic our zoning requirements may be. But as a plan commissioner, that's what we're told to follow. Okay? So the market might tell me something else, but we're told to follow what's written in our zoning ordinances and so forth. I find it so hard to believe that a planned community development seems to be able to occur on 2 parcels that are surrounded by 10 others. I would think that that whole quadrant would want to be a planned community development. Because I think it's easy to just take 2 parcels and define a new planned community. And I might speak out of both sides of my mouth based on the market comment I made. I don't think this property should have any commercial use. I don't think it would survive. It's not on Monona Drive, it's not on Broadway. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the architecture. I do have a problem with the height. I don't have a problem with the materials. Thanks for getting rid of the red. That was my only comment. I don't mind the land and stone staying low. I think land and stone, that kind of stone is a low material typically on buildings. You don't see it high, or you shouldn't see it high. If you were to go high with something, I would propose it go back to masonry. But where I have issues is with, and I do this for a living. I go in front of communities like this and present projects. And I don't think I've ever presented a project that did not meet the green space requirements, because it's a requirement. And I've never done one that didn't meet the parking requirements. So that's where I struggle with this. And I don't know why we're lax on these issues, personally. The parking requirements are 17% short if we share 40 surface stalls, which is in phase 2. So I don't know how phase 1 benefits from those stalls until phase 2 gets built, which makes phase 1 even shorter in parking. And then I don't know of any ordinance that allows street parking to be counted as your parking. Since when does that happen? Is that true?
It's not per ordinance, but we, with BESA, the corner of Bridge, that project, that was included as a finding of fact. Effectively the parking, that one was a little more unique because it dead-ended into a private street. But certainly along, the building right-of-way, but also there's a portion there where it was across the street. But that was onto One City Schools.
And I was not part of BESA, so, but in my world, you can't count street parking. It's not yours, unless you buy it. So if you take the 40 and you take the 22, that's 62 more stalls that you're short. Now, what's ironic is if your project was in Madison, we'd be saying the opposite.
Correct.
We'd be saying you have too much parking, okay? And we'd be fighting for you to build less parking. So again, I'm gonna speak, but we're in Monona. I also think the project, one of the interesting things in Monona is we don't have any height limits on any of our buildings. We ask that they be contextual. And to me, 7 stories next, which is surrounded by 1 and 2 and 1 3-story building, is not contextual. It's just not. In fact, the diagram that you showed with the vacancy square footages, you also included another diagram which showed the heights of the buildings. But you didn't include the 3 right across the street, which are all 1-story buildings. So I think the project is too dense. It'd be the most dense project that has more than half an acre in Monona. It'd be the tallest project in Monona. The density is 83.3. If we were to match the current 2, which is the second most dense project in Monona at 71.4, which some people might think is too dense, but let's say it's okay. If we were to match that density with your project, we would have 18 less units And our parking, your parking count would be right on with our parking requirements. So I just struggle with this project. I think the pool will get sun. I don't think Chipotle will get sun. And I struggle with how this parking equation has come about, and I don't find it reliable. So, I'm not anti-development at all. I just think we as commissioners are supposed to follow what's in front of us, and we're not. I'm trying to follow that. So, that's all I have.
What did you want?
Yeah, I just wanted to, John brought up a point that makes a lot of sense to me, and that is that area is a pocket of, and we're planning, we're doing that, the planned unit development in this small, this one parcel, when this would make a whole hell of a lot more sense to me if we were thinking about this entire pocket and then planning for the future with taller buildings that make sense with each other and whatnot. But this looks like an island in this spot, you know, this tall tower. It kind of reminds me of Springfield, Missouri, when you see the John Q. Hammonds Tower, like standing like 12 stories higher than every other building, a little bit. I don't know. But I think he has a good point about how to plan for those areas and planning for the area in general, and bringing the other parcels into the planning process makes more sense with that density, I guess. So.
Right. I mean, as this commission knows, we're scheduled to start a new comprehensive plan relatively soon, and there's no question, as we've all talked about as well, that as part of that comprehensive plan, we'll be looking at what are effectively Broadway, east and west, new design, because our Broadway design ideas are what, late 80s?
Early, actually.
Or early 90s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s. Yeah. So we're way overdue in terms of looking at that bigger picture, as well as on Monona Drive. And so this is, to a certain extent, in a vacuum. So I would just add that. Any other?
I
Yeah,
just
go
have
ahead.
a question. The density for the other, I don't have it in front of me. The Monona Pines was referenced as well as a high density. And I was just, or if you could refresh my memory, those were primarily one bedroom and studio apartments, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And all of their parking is on site in the ramps
It
under
is,
the
yes.
building? Yeah, so like, to me, that's not even much of a comparison.
I crossed off the Pines because
Yeah.
it's half an acre and there's only 48 units.
Yeah.
I don't think it's comparable.
And they're one bedroom and studio, whereas this is townhouse and two bedrooms, so
The mix is good.
I like the
I
mix
mean, I think
a
the mix
lot.
is good. I think
Yeah.
the architecture's good. I just,
Yeah, and I would just say,
Doesn't meet the requirements.
to me too, as somebody who's been listening to school board candidates for a few months here now, you know, I know that one of the concerns that our school district has, which isn't, and I'd say, but, you know, is that a lot of what we're building for housing is that smaller studio, one bedroom, and we want to see more families. I mean, I remember when I first moved into Monona, you know, we actually had a committee about how to attract families here to Monona, and obviously there are a lot more families here now than there used to be. You know, including commission members, but still, there's a concern that if all we're building is studio apartments, that doesn't get us very far. So I appreciate the fact that this has a bigger range and bigger mix. Yeah.
If I could ask maybe the applicant, I think one of the things, even writing the reports, that was a challenge was the sequencing, the phasing of this, and sort of how the parking would be allocated. I'm looking at the conceptual master plan, the first sheets that shows the existing commercial building tucked in with phase one and the surface lot that's there. Because you'd probably know better in terms of the current use of that, and my expectation was that there would be shared parking with this for phase one, but could you talk a little more about how that, would work transitioning into construction phase two, kind of as it would step through?
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to get that slide up, but
I'll find it, yeah.
while you're doing that, that's exactly the contemplation, is that if you're looking at the slide that shows just the phase one with the existing second office building still in place, there's basically the whole footprint of phase two is parking to the east. So the idea is that that parking lot would continue to function and be used for both buildings, which should be more than ample for that, as that second building is substantially vacant. Then the thought is, when the second building comes down, is that parking lot be the first thing that we put in the ground, and then build and stage from the east, so that we'll have that functional parking lot prior to the construction and completion of the second building. You should zoom in a little bit, but I'd like to mention again that, there's parking off-site. We have parking to the north, right across the street. That's 40 stalls. We're certainly open an idea about a cross easement agreement with our neighbor, if they're open to that as well. Certainly open to that. Just one other thing about the context, this particular, the one I'm looking at is a little bit different, but you can see the Yahara Terrace building, that it's not far from here. It's one lot away, and it has very similar massing and size, and I think it's been a nice contributor to the area. We need people down here. That'll help all those businesses, and we're really trying to put a first-class project in place here, working with the constraints that we have, and working with our history of being a strong neighbor here in Monona. And we really feel like this is a great way to bring more life and activity in here to help these businesses, our own included. And we feel like, we're pushing some envelopes here, and this will be the tallest building, it will be the best lot of things. But we think, we think the design's good. We think it really complements the site. We've been running these, building and running these facilities for decades and decades, and have thousands under management after these two projects are done. And we feel confident in the operation of this, both in terms of the parking and the density, and we think it'll be a great contributor to not only the vitality of the area, but also the future of Monona, financially and otherwise.
Okay.
As a point of discussion,
Yeah.
John, I just like to ask, and I appreciate your thoughts, and I respect your opinion, especially with this sort of stuff. Is your issue more with our zoning ordinances or the project? Or is it a little bit of both?
My issue is that as commissioners, we're supposed to follow our zoning ordinances, is my understanding, and we're not. So that's my issue.
Okay.
And I think they should be modified to modernize them. But until then, we're supposed to follow what people did in the 80s or 90s or whenever this was created.
Right.
This zoning district does allow for some
mean,
flexibility.
Some flexibility, yeah,
Some
but not
flexibility,
blatant
no?
disregard. I don't think Yahara Terrace, I don't think that's 7 stories, correct?
No, it's not.
No. Or 6.
Well, it depends how you look at them, it's slope, but yeah, it's,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think when we've, obviously, when we've made exceptions to our current zoning ordinance, given that it is old and needs to be updated, when we've made exceptions, we've obviously done so with findings of fact to not open every other development as an example to blowing through parking standards by whatever percentage, or for that matter, other issues around green. I mean, we have made some exceptions around the percentage of green for precisely the kinds of things that we've talked about here, like the fact that the pond is there and they created the pond and it's very much part of the development. That being said, it's not up to me. Yeah, Chris?
Well, I think this is great. I think we should have more discussions instead of us all saying one thing one time and then not responding
Yeah.
to each other.
Yeah.
I think this is awesome. I think John brought up a lot of good points. I think that's, for me, in my mind, why I brought up that condition would be strengthened, because we keep talking about our old code. Well, you know what? Tell me a place we've built in the last 20 years where it's overparked. Because I'm not aware of it.
Right.
Too much parking.
Yeah, where it's overparked, where there's too much parking, where we have empty lots sitting. Because I don't know where that is in Monona. And Monona's not downtown Madison. People that live here drive. If I lived downtown, I'd be walking to dinner, I'd be walking to a lot of things, but I don't here. I don't. We're a suburb. For better or worse, we're a suburb. So as far as the parking goes, I've not seen what we've done in the last 20 years to be too much parking anywhere. We've had the opposite problem.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is because of the businesses that are there, but not always. I mean, even when you talk about Yahar Terrace, even when that restaurant's not open, and that restaurant was taken into account with enough parking for it, that parking lot is still overfull. And they're using Rutabaga's parking, which is now the dental clinic's parking, because the dental clinic actually had that parking. They're approved with the parking, they met our standards, and it's full all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen is they're going to charge for underground parking. And that 40-stall surface lot is going to start getting filled up by tenants instead of visitors, and that's where the concern is. That's where you're going to start having a real parking push. There'll be empty stalls underneath it, and the general public won't have access to those.
if I could just interject that, it's, our normal operating is to include an underground parking stall with each unit, and then we only rent what the excess ones are. So everyone will have at least one underground included in their rent.
I anticipated that response. This building is going to be there for 50 years. You may not be the owner for 50 years. Somebody else might come in, and most people charge extra for a stall. And so we have to look at it just like if somebody else is going to be in there too. I hope you have it for 50 years, but we have to anticipate that you may not.
Understood.
And most of the people I know have charged for that parking. So there's two issues. The one, the parking, I'm worried about it, but I'm confident that by the time they start phase 2, we're going to have a better handle on it, and we're going to know what we like. I wasn't worried about phase 1 because I counted it up. I went there and counted up because I had the same concern. There's almost 100 stalls there.
What if there is no phase 2?
Yeah, the second building is phase 2.
Yeah, I know. What if that ever happens?
Well, the parking lots there's almost 100 stalls of parking there.
What if they sell the
So if
property?
they sell the property to an office,
Well,
someone puts
there
a
you
call
go.
center
Yeah,
there,
You're right.
and suddenly you need 100 stalls.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They could do that.
I hope that doesn't happen.
No,
Phase
you're right.
2 gets
You're right
built.
about that. Then we have a building that's,
But you can't rely on things that may not happen.
no, you're right. You're right about that.
I can appreciate that as well, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. All I can really offer up right now is that, we've been here for decades. We have no plan of going anywhere else. Our modus is to hold our own properties throughout the county, but especially here in our home, Monona. And we anticipate that going on for generations. That should be taken into account at least.
Other comments?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would, that's a really good point I hadn't thought about. So how do we condition this that 60 stalls of that parking lot are for this project and it can't be cut off? I mean, because this building can't survive without that extra parking lot. And we all know that they're underparked until it's proven, you know, what it really deserves is another 60 stalls of surface parking, which in my mind we have, but the point is that could be a separate parcel, it could be sold off.
If you're talking about phase one to the parking lot, we could cross easement that. We could burden it. I
You
wouldn't
could
mind
burden
that.
it, but
Sure.
for that, it would need to be burdened by that extensive of a thing.
Well, we do cross easement parking everywhere. Grand Park's a perfect example,
Yeah.
and we'd be happy to do it here. We own both parcels. We can encumber it, and we can do a cross easement if that would help. I have no objection.
We
It would
need
help a
to,
lot.
we need to substantially encumber it. And, because I do agree with what Patrick said, I go up around the Great Dane and everything in there too, and it's hard to find parking. That street is parked full, and it is hard to find parking around there. So I don't know where those extra stalls are. I'd like you to show me so I can find them.
Okay. Any other discussion? And if not, do I have a motion? Or are we prepared to make a motion? This is on the GDP only.
I'm not a birder. So, I don't know the mechanism you're speaking of. It's just in perpetuity that there are gonna be easement for those stalls, and that all has to get drawn out and all the legalese to.
Yeah, it's not complicated. I mean,
If we did it here tonight, I'd recommend we require that there's 60 stalls maintained on that site for this property. And we only make a recommendation to city council, and city council makes the final approval, and they would have to involve Bill Cole to see legally how we encumber that. But that would assure that phase one has it. The only other issue is certainly the height that John brought up.
But correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying 60 stalls.
Yeah.
Their plan says 40 stalls for that property.
Correct.
Okay, so
I'm
you're increasing-
saying we're underparked,
You're
and we're
putting
not
street
certain of it
parking on
yet.
there too.
There is
That's
street
what you're
parking.
doing.
No, I'm saying for the lot. In my mind, where the commission was at least most of us, is this is underparked, right? And we're willing to roll with it, see if it works, but that's why we're putting that caveat in phase two, may need to have more parking or reduced units so that we can meet the parking that we need. So until that's proven, in my mind, we need extra stalls to make sure that this building doesn't stand alone and never has enough parking.
So instead of 302 stalls, you're saying 322 stalls?
No, because that'd be total for the whole thing. I'm talking about for phase one. Phase two,
All right, so
we're gonna look at again, right?
for phase one, then you're saying 168 plus 20, 188 is required.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, if that's what it is, yeah, because there is no 40 stall lot. It's a great point. It isn't there.
Corey?
And
Is it just too big?
Oh, don't look at me.
I mean, if we're concerned about the parking, and like, if another applicant came in who didn't own that other lot, would we approve this?
no, no way.
I mean, I don't think it's too big, but I think it's too big without a plan for the entire area.
I second that comment.
Yeah.
Well, we had asked for that in the last meeting, kind of a master plan, right? And I thought to myself, how are you gonna do that? You don't own part of the property.
Right.
But you do own a bunch of the property to the south. And I thought you might come in with a plan that says, hey, here's a 6-story apartment building that's gonna go there. In 5-10 years, when those buildings are gonna be torn down, because you said they're 20+ years old, and you're tearing down 30-year-old. So I'm guessing in 10 years, that property could look a lot different as well, in a positive way.
There's a
So,
lot of potential, there's a lot of potential, yeah.
But that still leaves a significant portion of the quadrant, I'll say, that you don't own and that you can't start drawing on, I don't think.
Well, we did.
Okay.
But that's why we didn't bring it
Okay.
to the public for that very reason. But yeah, we took a look at, how that would move up Monona Drive.
Okay.
And how it would fill in, and there certainly are a lot of opportunities there for, and, the other point to make is that this has more to do with the evolution of a market as opposed to the age of a building. The stuff down to the south is a little bit of a different animal. It's not office, it's drive-up, it's what we call drive-up retail. Generally speaking, it's the future is brighter for that type of use in that part than what we're dealing with these dated office buildings that, the future is not bright for those. And so when we say it's a 30-year-old building, I mean, I can appreciate that because we built it, but it's not so much that they're like decaying or falling apart or anything like that. They're well built and they have substantial materials. They're just coming to the end of their useful life.
Sure. I think part of the challenge here is that the cart's ahead of the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And that we want a new master plan for the area.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see this being a part of it. But right now, it's not part of it.
Right. But we're not going to see that for a year.
I know,
So,
that's one.
right. Yeah.
Going back to the GDP in front of us, we're talking about putting some condition about maintaining 40, 60 stalls, whatever that is in the surface lot of a different property. To an earlier point, there's no guarantee that phase 2 is coming, but that right is there in perpetuity. Are we doing a CSM to carve that out? Are we starting to fracture these lots now? Because part of it's going to have to be parking for this one building in perpetuity, whether that second phase gets built or not, or if you move on, sell the business, but then that lot is subdivided, for lack of a better term, to allow for parking, right? I don't know where the lines would draw or how many stalls would be, but you get what I'm saying?
Well, it would be across easement, so it wouldn't be like these 5 stalls go here. It would just be like you have access to that lot. We'd encumber it, we'd
With the whole
record it.
lot?
Yeah, we'd
Oh,
record the deed.
Okay.
And it's really just a safety to make sure that in the off chance that that second phase doesn't get built, that you're not going to orphan this building. And I think that makes all the sense in the world. We're happy to do it. Now, when the time comes to do phase 2, then we reassess those easements, we reassess the parking, we reassess everything. And, we either stay with the original plan, which is putting that 40 stalls in first, before we take those other stalls away, or we revisit as part of the PIP for phase 2 that says, Dan, we were right, you were wrong, and we need some more parking, so let's figure out how to do it. But again, my point is this: we don't want this to be underparked either.
Understood.
We would legitimately feel like this is a good plan that'll function just fine. We've pushed these envelopes in other areas, and they've been a big success. So we feel good about it, and we're confident in it. But we also understand that you guys have a public responsibility. And we want to be a strong partner in figuring out ways to bridge that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that cross easement, it seems to me that we've solved the parking problem, if you will. If phase 2 doesn't get built, or even if it does get built. I guess it goes back, to me, it goes back to the fact that we don't have a master plan that we're operating with, and whether or not, and we don't have any height ordinances, to John's point, and we don't have anything related to height in Monona. And so we are breaking new ground with this height. No question about it. It's not good. I'm talking about breaking ground with height. That's probably not a good. Yeah, Chris.
Do you know, Doug, I see Chief McMillan weighed in on this, but can we reach 7 stories with our equipment?
We can, I talked to them about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good. All right.
Yeah, our limit is, I believe, is 7 with our current equipment.
Okay. And also, I would suggest we do more than have a cross easement. We actually encumber that land, that there's 60 stalls allocated till phase 2 comes in, but 60 stalls allocated. If they sell it, a cross easement doesn't do us any good. If they come in and they want to park 90 cars, yeah, you have a cross easement. Take any empty stalls you can find. So somehow it would limit a reuse of that building that they intend to vacate. But if there is an adaptive reuse, it would be limited in parking because of the need for parking for this building. So that's a little more than a cross easement.
It is. I would offer up that there's only so much room there. The building that's there, they're not going to need that much parking.
But that's the kind of thing Attorney Cole would be able to figure out. But I would think it'd be more than a cross easement. So the whole thing goes back down to if we're comfortable with building a building that big and checking to make sure that it has enough parking as we get along in it. And hopefully you don't try to build a second building before the first one's full.
I can guarantee you that we will not. But we also think that this will be really well received, and I think it'll fill up on schedule and bring a lot of new residents to town.
I would also say that if you've already cut the second building down by a floor to accommodate the parking as articulated in your application, which is shy, then isn't it inevitable that phase 2, in order to accommodate both buildings, unless we're all totally wrong and we're not short on parking, does it mean that you end up having to build a 3-story building for the second, or in order to make up the difference? In which case, the units, the phases don't go well together and would violate the GEP because it would be more than a 10% cut from where we are now, conceivably.
Well, it wouldn't violate it with the one condition that we may require fewer units to be able to satisfy parking needs. That would be one of the conditions in there that we as a commission could require less density on that second building. But the whole issue goes back to that proposed surface lot. Right now it's only 40 stalls. Is a surface lot of 40 stalls enough to satisfy the visitors and the people that don't park underground for 227 units?
Right.
That's a big question.
And the dependency of 22 on-street parking stalls.
Correct. Which, yeah, the good news about it is this is not a residential district, so there's no residential need for that.
Well, Top Golf's going to park a lot of people.
Who's that?
Okay. Other discussion, and again, do we have a motion? Do we have more discussion?
Sorry, I have another question.
Yes.
Just for clarity's sake, we keep using 40 stalls of the surface. I see 61 shared residential stalls. Where's the 40 versus the 60? Can we make it 60?
Can if I can jump in, the 40 stalls would be at full, my understanding is full build out. So that's the surface lot between the two buildings. At completion of the GDP as submitted. That, although in the application and sort of in the review attributed to phase 1, would not be constructed until phase 2. And so that's where the discussion of the circa 60 stalls came from, with the existing surface lot for the commercial building, and in some way potentially allocating those or committing those to this building in order to meet that. Because the metrics, I was looking this up, the metrics for the parking, it's 128 covered within this 125 unit building. 14 of those, or an additional 14 proposed on street, and then that's where the 60 was being discussed. Per city code today, the 125 units would require 195 stalls. The math, I will say the math for the GDP did include the 40 units, the 40 stalls. They were certainly only counted once. They were not double counted. Phase 2, the math does not include any surface stalls. It's simply covered and street. So it was really more of a sequencing, and I think the applicant mentioned that the surface would be built first and then construction of the building would begin. But certainly prior to that, is worthy of discussion, those conditions.
Okay, thank you.
So Doug, your numbers you just gave us, they're basically 70 stalls short in phase 1, right?
For covered parking, yes, on site.
Well, for total parking.
Correct.
There's 70 stalls short. And if we had 60 stalls dedicated, we'd be very close, and there is a possibility of some parking in the street if, everybody's there.
Correct.
So it would satisfy for phase 1, but it certainly is a big question what you satisfy. You put in another 100 units, and now you're cutting your 60 stalls down to 40. Will it handle it? I mean, you have excess, but your excess stalls there are going to be only for tenants, right?
I'm sorry, which stalls?
Your phase 2 building, you've got, around 100 units and 130 some parking stalls, so you got an extra 30 some stalls there to help with your parking requirements, but who parks there? Just the tenants.
Well, I mean, there are ways to open that. Again, it's like when we get to phase 2, we're gonna have a lot of our answers, right? And we'll know what our needs are. And if we need to open up the ground floor of the covered parking, and we know I have extra parking, we can put some public parking in there. And
So you'd be open to having maybe the first floor or something available for general public, which would, instead of now having 40 stalls for visitors and deliveries and everything, you might have 60 or 70 stalls.
We're open to anything.
Independent of the street parking.
Yes, the answer to that is yes, we're open to that consideration, because we're open to making something work. Because if we're at that point, we've made a very expensive bet next door, and we gotta make sure that we finish the race and make sure that's protected. And if we need more parking, then we'll figure out a way to make that happen. But at your point, we probably are a little over parked underground in the second building. So, but again, there's ways to, open some of that up.
So then the biggest objection comes to the 7 stories. Fire chief's good though, right?
Fire chief is good, but can anyone explain the literal comment of some operational challenges owing to the building height? What does that mean?
That was included from the pre-hearing in November, as sort of reference. My understanding is that those have been addressed now, and I think the applicant could talk to that more.
Okay.
I think there was more detail given about hydrants, and sort of calculations were done more recently.
That's my understanding, but
Okay.
that's when I turned to Dan Day, who's normally sitting right there, but he's not here tonight. But we can certainly get you that information. I'm confident that we've addressed it.
And to clarify my comment about the chief being okay, the only conversation I had with him was about height. So apparatus and height, not challenges specific to the building.
Right, and I'm sure it comes to having wet pipes and things like that, so
Yeah,
the fire
we might
protection
need a-
system is, I'm sure you've heard that in the discussion, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The wet stand pipes, okay.
And we might need a booster pump, we don't know yet. But
Pardon?
we might need a booster pump,
Yeah.
we don't know.
Yeah, and speaking to a lot of firefighters, they said, major fire, we're never gonna park the truck right next to that building, we're gonna stay away from it. So,
I had the same question as John, but I think in the PIP materials, there was more detail.
Yep.
So
There is,
I
yes.
assumed it was
Correct.
the same,
Still no wetness.
yeah.
well, what's the will of the commission? You wanna delay it, or do you wanna throw out a proposal?
That's what I'm trying to get to here.
Sorry, I got a lot of questions.
No, questions are good.
Those are good.
Questions are absolutely good, and comments are absolutely good. I'm just,
It
And I'm
gets
happy.
better from discussion.
it's,
I guess I have a comment.
yeah.
So, the fact that we're talking about this much is a good sign, I think, because I've been a part of this commission for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, and if, in the past, when there's been parking concerns, it's just been a no. But it seems, we're trying to find a way to, yes. I do wonder, though, the 7 stories, if you did take out some more units, it would alleviate both concerns. Can you tell us a little bit about your thought process again for the 7 stories?
Well, yeah, it's simple economics, so I'll give you an example. Just these changes that we've made, stepping back the building, they cost us, depending on how you're counting them, 4 or 5 units. So that represents about $100,000 a year in gross potential income that's gone. But at the same time, our cost per unit went up because the building's not as efficient as it used to be. So now our incomes are shrinking, our unit costs are going up, and the margins just continue to get pinched. So it's not quite as simple as just saying, well, just take a story off the building, because then we have to take another look at how we can make the economics work for the whole thing. It's a balancing act. Yeah, our per unit, I can tell you, as of last week, went from 271 to 277.5. So
A unit?
per unit times 125 units.
Average unit.
Yeah, cost per unit. Mhm. So that's what happens, you make the building less efficient or make it, it just gets hard. It gets hard to make it work financially.
Will phase 1 have an emergency generator?
I don't know if it's required or not. We don't typically, no, I take that back. Grand Park does have an emergency generator, backup generator, so I anticipate it probably will, because it's the same general size, but I don't know for sure. Typically, that's going to be required just to keep the elevators running.
City of Madison 6-story building would be required to have an emergency generator, so that means you would have 2. One for phase 1 and one for phase 2.
Oh, here, you mean,
That's a
yeah.
6-story building as well.
Okay,
That's in your
bring it
pro
up.
forma.
Hmm?
Okay,
Yeah.
so you do have 2 emergency generators.
Well, we didn't really pro forma out the second building to that detail.
But the first building has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear, it's still a 6-7, right? So we keep saying a 7-story building, but it's because of the pitch.
Correct.
It's actually 6.
Correct. It's 6 at the street,
Right.
7 in the back.
7 in the back, right. Okay, still. I'm happy to take a motion. More questions, comments? No?
Plenty of lively conversation.
I'll share my opinion. I'm leaning towards being in favor of this as long as we tie up parking for phase 1. I feel better about that. I feel okay with the 6-story one side, 7 stories the other, however you want to fillet that.
By our zoning, it's a 7-story building.
Okay.
By the definitions that we have.
7-story.
Okay. Chris?
I'll move approval, finding of facts as written by staff. Condition 1 and 2 is written by staff. Condition 3, that the commission may require more parking, reduce units, or a combination of both during the phase 2 review and approval. And condition 4, that 60 stalls, parking stalls, shall be reserved in the existing phase 2 site for use by phase 1 until the construction of phase 2. Does that make any sense?
You got it?
Yeah.
So could you read it back to us?
We have a second?
So I have findings of fact 1 through 4 as proposed. conditions 1 and 2 as proposed in the staff report. 3 would be modified, that, and I just have the highlights here, but an increase in parking and or decrease of units may be required for, during the construction of, or during the permitting of phase 2. Condition number 4, 60 stalls shall be reserved on the phase 2 site until the construction of phase 2, on the existing phase 2
Yeah.
site.
Do we have a second so we can talk about it?
Yeah,
A second.
I just wanted to make
Okay.
sure, yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that he read it back first.
And
before-
4 is a little muddy, but it's more than just a cross easement. It's that no matter what happens in that building, there'll be 60 stalls there for this. If you build this first building, there'll be 60 stalls reserved. I don't care, they don't have to be painted out, but they'll have to be the quantity there, so you can't put something in that building, or somebody can't buy and put something in that building. It requires all 90 or 100 stalls that are there.
Yeah.
And I think the best person to write that is Bill Cole.
But you're not asking for those to be marked and reserved and
No,
enforced?
no,
Okay.
no, but when I say reserved, if I say there's a cross easement, that means you guys can go
Understand.
back and forth, right?
Understand, yeah.
And that's all it means. It doesn't mean that there's so many stalls that, you could put a use in that building. Oh, we're not gonna build phase 2, we'll put a use in there and it needs 90 stalls.
Understood.
This way, when you come back or you sell that lot, which we're all hoping doesn't happen, John's right, we have to prepare for it. Then whoever comes in will say, well, there has to be 60 stalls here for that building.
Mhm.
Unless at that point, the commission's found out that, you know what, they were right, 40 stalls is enough. But at that point, we can address that. Until then, our anticipated parking needs are being met.
That's fair.
How's that?
That's fair. I just didn't want to get into like enforcing reserves, so just from an operational
No,
standpoint.
and condition 3 is a little muddier than you'd like. Normally, you would just talk about parking, but this says we do have the ability to reduce units or require more parking. So although you have an approval with a GDP, it's like, yeah, this
Understood.
phase 2 can be tweaked by the commission.
Yep.
Chris, you keep saying our parking requirements will be met. They're still short.
They're 10 stalls short. and-
They're still short.
Yeah. and-
Okay,
and-
so I'll make that clear.
Yep, there's still 10 from our code, but
17% short,
no, not with 60 stalls.
not with 60 stalls.
With 40 stalls it was. And
Okay.
with 60, they're going to be a few percent, and we do have, and we are recognizing, at least I am, that there is a possibility on those overflow days to park in the street. And when we get to a PIP, if we ever get to it, I would anticipate there we would ask to have a cross easement with their property across the road too for now. But for the GDP, it's kind of GDP's kind of not that kind of detail. So that's my thought. But I love having these discussions and talking about it. And I'm not sure I did anything you can support yet, but
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
I will state that the motion does not meet our green space requirements, doesn't say anything about that. Motion is anti-contextual in height, period. And it still does not meet our parking requirements. It gets closer, but it still doesn't meet our parking requirements. That's my only comments.
well, I'd like to say the finding of fact 3 really does address the fact that we're taking the cove and the different amenities into account for not being close enough to the green space. Because if you take the cove and everything, you've got plenty of green space
Yeah,
there.
right.
Okay. I have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's not any other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
So we have 2 nays.
I think I had 3.
Hmm?
Mr. Chapman, Ms. Fallon, Mr. DePula, Alder DePula.
Renee as well?
Yes.
Okay. So I have 3 nays and just 2 yeas?
Brandon,
3?
did you?
What? I was a yea on it.
You're a yea. Chris is a yea.
So it's up to
Rob
you.
is a yea.
Chair Moore, right?
So it's up to Chair Moore. I'm going to vote in favor.
Where do we end up, 3 and 3 on the motion?
The city council wrestle with it. Okay. Okay, that takes us to the PIP. Specifically. Number 6D, sorry. 6C, public hearing for DSI Real Estate Group LLC on the request for approval of a precise implementation plan, PIP, for Phase 1 for the site located at 100-300 River Place for a multifamily development, case number 2-026-2024. What would you like to tell us about the PIP?
I'm not sure what more there is to be said about this, but I'd just like to reiterate, everything we already covered, and open up any kind of discussion. We really feel like, again, that this is a great engine for redevelopment of the whole corridor, much like our original River Place was all those years ago. So time's come to bring some more people in. So I know it's more of a GDP thing, but.
Is there anything with the PIP that you would want to walk us through with all the PIP documents, or?
I defer to Doug if there's something that is of particular concern. I'm happy to address it as best I can.
Okay.
I'll highlight them during staff report.
Okay, great. Then we'll close the public hearing and move to number 6D, consideration of action for DSI Real Estate Group LLC on the request of approval of a precise implementation plan, PIP, for Phase 1 for the site located at 100-300 River Place for a multifamily development, case number 2-026-2024. Doug?
Thanks. I promise I will keep this brief for the commission. The PIP for River Place for the recently recommended GDP, the staff report has a lot more of this detail. This is under the planned community development process, the community design district zoning. We've spoken about the land use. It was discussed, and it has been discussed, that a certified survey map will be required. There are 3 lots here, I believe, so consolidating those into 2. It's recommended that the PIP not take effect until that CSM has been recorded. The architecture, I won't really add any more detail other than there were some changes made, probably most notably along the boardwalk, so sort of the south and the southwest side of the building. Just sort of some of the entrances there, they still have direct access to the townhomes, but just some changes were made there. The site design in terms of the lot coverage, 26.8 of green space, that is listed for the entire site. It is not broken out by Phase 1 or Phase 2. Maybe something to discuss. Certainly that was acknowledged in the GDP, but just maybe how that breaks out by lot, especially once the CSM is determined and those boundaries formalized. The circulation, specifically as it relates to the construction, the sort of shared parking surface lot that would be there, the 40 stalls, do provide for that sort of buffer between the 2 buildings and easy access to the covered parking. But just access during this time, the possible encumbrance to the other lot, and just how some of those would take place, as well as the pickups, deliveries, those kind of things, if they would be best served coming off of River Place. One item that was discussed was traffic impact. That had not really come up during the pre-hearing. It came up during the staff review and in some discussion with Vierbecker as well. Public Works staff brought that up and asked if a traffic impact analysis had been completed. That was not done. That was not really something that came up during Plan Commission review. One suggestion that staff had in discussion of that was that maybe looking at these 2 buildings, the commercial buildings sort of at their peak occupancy, and sort of how the traffic flows would have operated during those times. Certainly this area is quite unique in terms of the access, both in and out, some of the turning motions, and specifically Monona Drive, some of the challenges sort of getting back out onto there. So that may be something without doing the full TIA, but there could be possibility to look into that a little bit more. Some more specifics about the parking. the possibility for electric vehicle charging, conduit, both at grade as well as inside of the lot. Bike storage, bike parking to be able to assist with softening some of the demand there and maybe alleviating the need for the second car and such within the building as well. Landscaping, we didn't touch on this too much, but the standards here are required based upon the off-street parking stalls that are provided. You may have seen some of the math that's included in the staff report. The number of canopy trees, the application does meet that. There are additional as well that are shown, including evergreen trees as well as ornamental trees. The points, landscaping points, I do believe that it is underneath and below the standards there for phase 1. Maybe something worth discussing, that there may be opportunity to catch that up in phase 2, or if there are adjustments that can be made. It is pretty extensive and again may well be owing to the lesser green space, but maybe when incorporating into the full site may be more appropriate. A photometric plan was included, and there are 34 light fixtures around the site, as well as, I believe, 12 more on the pool deck. There may be opportunity for some additional lighting, especially when considering some of the public access, the boardwalk access sort of on the western side of the site. Of note, these are not the gooseneck lights that would sort of be specified for that area per the previous Broadway corridor plan, but again, feel like they fit the more modern aesthetic of the building a little more appropriately. We do have Darren Pope here from Via-Beca. He conducted the full engineering review on this, and I will turn it over to him to kind of run through. And department head comments were shared, or plans were shared, and comments received. We did have a few from Chief McMullen, Fire Chief McMullen. They were lifted and put straight into conditions, suggesting conditions of the PIP. And Brad Brune had some additional comments from Public Works perspective. They were typed and printed. It was easier than effectively lifting those and trying to put conditions around them. But often they will sort of piggyback with the Via-Beca plans and sort of the civil comments and such. So with that, staff recommends the discussion of this. If approval is recommended, there are findings of fact and conditions included in the staff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Turn it to Darren.
Yeah, I was going to say, Darren, thank you for your patience. Before I go to the commission, would you be so kind as to weigh in this evening?
Sure.
Thank
you. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'll be brief, given the time spent on this already. We did engineering review for the site plan. There were a few areas on the plans that could use some more spot grades and some more, attention in terms of the grading and showing what the intent was. If you have specific questions, feel free to ask me. I won't go into the details of those. Kind of jumping into the stormwater part of it, this development kind of came through right at the cusp of when you were renewing the stormwater ordinance. But when the plans were submitted, the previous version of the ordinance was in place. So that's the ordinance that we're operating under to review this site plan, just so you know that the previous stormwater requirements are applying to this site plan. So looking at the stormwater management, they are proposing some underground detention to deal with peak runoff rate control, and that seems satisfactory in doing that. For sediment reduction, they are adding some parking lots in a drive aisle. They are, reducing the amount of parking there and replacing it with rooftop, which would result in cleaner stormwater. So I guess to that effect, the stormwater report did not include any sediment reduction or sediment load modeling, but yet the ordinance technically would still require that. So we're recommending that they do that. I feel confident they would be able to meet the sediment reduction requirements because of the change from parking spaces to rooftop. They have the underground storage, if they're going to counting on for providing infiltration for redevelopment. infiltration is required where it's feasible to do so. Oil and grease, we have a recommendation to add that. They didn't really have anything that would address the oil and grease. And we're recommending that because of the proximity of the project to the Yahara River there in the cove. And I think it can simply be done by adding some inlet protection that has the oil and grease booms in them. I think that's all that I will mention, and leave the rest of the time for you to ask any questions you might have regarding it.
Thank you. With that, I think I will open it up to the commission.
Can we start at Chris's end?
Sorry?
Can we start with?
Can we start with Chris? Chris?
Haven't I talked enough tonight?
No, it's okay.
Okay. First, I guess Darren, since we have you right now, you have a suggestion there that all downspouts be routed to pervious surfaces if possible. There's a lot of cases where you have problems with icing and such around a building when you don't get them into some storm sewer system right away. With all the water they're infiltrating into the ADS system, it would seem if there's a few isolated ones that go directly into the storm sewer, that would be appropriate here, would it not? Because where we say we're feasible, it was before we had all the ordinance we have now with the required infiltrations, and it was just like, can we do something in some places? And there's an argument made on this particular project because of time and concentration that you're better getting the water off this site right away before the Yahara River gets filled up with all the stuff that's coming down after its appropriate time of concentration. I've had those conversations with Jeremy, and he kind of agrees that when you're right on the Yahara like this, get rid of it sometimes when you can. So anyhow, it's just a thought when you're looking at it. It probably isn't necessary to get them all in there. A comment both you and Brad had was requiring filter fabric under the construction entrance. And I actually helped write the Wisconsin technical standard on that, and we left that as a consideration instead of a criteria, because there's a lot of situations where really it muddles it up to have that filter fabric there when it's not needed for the structure of the construction entrance. So I'm not sure that it should be a requirement as much as let the designer decide if it's going to be needed in this instance. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the integrity of the sub base underneath it.
Absolutely.
Situations where they're putting the construction entrance over maybe some existing pavement, then it doesn't make sense to do that. But we've seen a lot of sites where the construction entrance, because of the softness of the subsoil, you get the trucks running over it and it pushes it down into the subsoil, and you lose it, and you're constantly fighting with trying to add more material. So that fabric will help to prevent that from happening.
I absolutely agree with what you just said, but in that situation, it helps a lot. In other situations, when you have the construction entrance in and you're trying to loosen a stone, because a stone should really be loosened every day, all you're doing is snagging filter fabric if you don't need it. And that's why it was left as a consideration versus a criteria in the technical standard. So just a general comment. Question for the applicant. I think you said before, what type of foundation system are you planning here?
Chris, you'd ask me that. Is the
I did, but I mean, you've got some poor subsoils here. You know that.
Yeah, for sure. I just not
But
familiar
I think
with
they're
this.
doing, were they just, do you know?
Probably aggregate piers.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I thought you said.
It hasn't been fully designed yet.
Okay, but so you're aware of
Oh, yeah.
of it, and likely, because I think that's what you said before, is just the rammed aggregate piers?
Yeah.
Okay. And that kind of goes back to your parking lot, but that's up to you. You've got professionals looking at that. I mentioned it last time, we should have some terrace trees. Your plan doesn't show any terrace trees. You've got a nice landscape plan, but there is some kind of terrace trees there now, the ones that have survived, but I suspect they're probably in your way And once you grade out for the sidewalk and everything, it's going to be better just to plant some new terrace trees.
I would agree with that.
But I would suggest that gets added. Kayak launch should be added.
Sure.
Okay. Traffic, where we talked about traffic, it seems to me that the problem's probably going to be at peak hour. And we could certainly sign it where it hits Broadway for a no left turn during a certain peak hour restriction. And that's something, much like parking, you could monitor it for a while and then to see if there's an issue and add it later, or it could be required right away. I don't know if people will sit there during rush hour and try to turn left out of there. It's a really tough maneuver, and I think that's what everybody's worried about, right? And going back to that, are we thinking we want a traffic study, or at least that estimation of generated trips from the office buildings versus the generated trips from the residential? Do we want that before we approve a PIP? I mean, I don't know how strongly staff feels about this.
I think, at least in the discussions I had, it was really sort of one or two emails. It wasn't pushed too far, I wouldn't say, by the public works staff that raised it. I think, at least in other instances, it has been shown, these are pretty predictable use. The multifamily is a pretty predictable use. I'm not sure myself. I have too many concerns, again, if there is that condition down the line.
Well, let me back up then one step. With all the disagreement on the GDP, are we of the mind that we want to actually take an action on the PIP tonight, or discuss it and hold it for the next meeting and see what a reading at the council even does on the GDP?
I was actually going to ask that a minute ago.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't. But what other people think? That was a question on, that's the question.
Yeah, I
on-
agree with that.
You agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Wait and see what the council does?
Agree with, I couldn't hear down at this
Yes,
side.
no, I
He
agree
says
with
he
your
agrees with
perspective about that.
Which one, that?
That,
leaving it
wait
to
and
city
see what the
council.
council does with the GEP.
Before
Okay.
discussing the PIP.
Why?
Why?
Why would we wait?
Because if the council turns down the GDP, then we would have spent a lot of time on a PIP that doesn't connect anymore.
A lot of time, like the next 15 minutes? Is that what I mean? I'm confused. Or is a lot of staff time, or?
I don't, no, I don't think it would be a lot of staff time. I mean, we've obviously teed up both. Maybe it's gonna be only 15 minutes, but something tells me that Chris is the only one with a lot of questions, so I'm assuming it's more than 15 minutes for all of us to weigh in on the PIP.
I think we should take care of it tonight.
Okay, let's take a vote. Can I have a motion on the floor? As it relates to, or let's take a vote. Do we want to work on all those in favor of working through the PIP tonight signify by saying aye?
Aye.
So this is, I'm actually thinking about the question that John has asked in the past about, if we have a vote on a thing and we were to say no to something tonight, what does that do for the applicant? What does that cause the applicant? I'm not so much thinking about the city council
Right.
conversation, but if there was a split, sort of vote on the GDP, and this seems like the PIP is actually forcing the issue, almost looking like we're superseding whatever the vote was on the GDP anyways by moving to the PIP. That would be my perception of voting one way or the other on the PIP. And if, for whatever reason, does it set the applicant back farther by us, perhaps voting against the PIP this evening than to allow the opportunity for any checking and adjusting from feedback from city council? So if anybody's time, it's not our time right now, because I think you're right, 15 minutes. It's not staff time, but in terms of what impact does it have for the applicant? if we were to, make a decision against the PIP this evening? Is that a substantive setback for the applicant?
Yeah, I would just say that it's in my experience and the 8 years, 7 years on this plan commission is that we very rarely have done the GDP and the PIP in combination. There usually is a gap between the two. In time.
It's been done both ways, but
Yeah.
at least they'll be considered at the same meeting. Maybe one returns this next meeting or something like that.
Right.
But
Right. I'm not suggesting that we would wait 6 months. I'm just, Chris.
Yeah, I actually asked it for a whole different perspective. I think regardless, we owe it to the applicant. They prepared all these materials. We owe it to them to give them feedback on what we think about their materials.
Okay.
The reason I asked if we're approving it tonight is because I was unsure of the traffic situation that staff mentioned, if they wanted this back before we would approve a PIP or vote on a PIP, I should say. Do we want that back? Is it a big enough deal to them? Or, because if it is, we don't want to approve something without it.
Right.
So that's the perspective I was taking on that. I think we absolutely owe it to them. They've come tonight and they've prepared full documents, at least to give them whatever feedback we have on their documents.
Okay.
Are we open to speak?
Yeah.
I'm getting really confused. Staff didn't recommend a traffic study.
Actually,
Or did they?
Yeah, some of the papers they did.
They did?
They're back from Brad Brunn, or who was it that had it?
it was the Public Works Director raised it. It's included in the page 5 of the staff report. It's mentioned that Public Works staff raised that. There was some chatter amongst the engineers, but I do not believe that it elevated to a level of a condition of approval. It was more of something to work through, and again, probably should have been a condition in hindsight, but more, I think it was more of a question than it was a concern. A full concern would be my read of it, at least.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and provide feedback to the applicant and tonight, and whether or not we take action tonight is another whole issue, obviously. But Corey or Chris, do you have any more?
Probably. Give me a chance to read through all my notes.
Okay. Corey?
Let's see. We already talked with the kayak launch, and a question that I'll defer to Rob, but I saw you had the shade trees that you had selected in the landscaping plan. I wasn't sure if those had the longevity that you would want for this site, so that's something
Aspen.
yeah.
Birch,
Yeah. And then there was a lot of comments in the staff report about the lighting, and so I guess I would just ask you to pay attention to the lighting recommendations that were in the staff report to replace those with the LED. And other than that, I don't have a lot of specific comments.
Okay. Sean?
No comment?
Rob?
Regarding the landscape, aspen as a specimen tree in a very formalized landscape like this is probably not the best. It's kind of weak wooded, it's a pioneer species, grows really fast, but usually doesn't have the longevity. So maybe look at alternatives to the aspen and the birch, especially the aspen in the southeast corner. I think I said all my comments about the building, the architecture, and the GDP portion. For the traffic study, I don't know. I feel like we get them every time and they return and say it's not substantial, and it's positioned on Broadway and Monona Drive, so I have a hard time believing it would have a major impact other than a left turn out of onto Broadway.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay. Patrick?
No comment.
No comments.
No comments. Okay. Any other comments from anybody else, even the people, Chris? Yeah.
I see a couple more I had circled. Your condition 14 about the swimming pool shall be completely enclosed by a fence. It's like a patio area with, I'm sure, a fence so they can't fall off the end, and then the building all around it. So I'm not sure, you're not anticipating a separate fence in closer because you're on the pool with the patio.
Yeah, we have that.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
So there's a fence around it, what they're
Yes.
talking about?
Mhm.
Okay. And then, I had mentioned this before, but I think you need something by the building where that fire lane is, or you go to your underground parking.
Yeah.
You've got no curb there. You're gonna have cars maybe running in there, snow plows coming along, you need something to protect your building.
Yeah, some bollards or something.
If it were my property, I'd put a curb, the face of it 2 foot out from the building so that the overhang of a car coming or something can't get in there. It just channels them in there, it keeps the people out of there, keeps your snow plows out of there. You want to protect the building somehow. And I say that assuming that it would still leave a wide enough fire lane for the fire department. Because I think it's 27 or something right now, you recall it's gotta be 24 for a fire lane?
I think it's 26.
26?
26, I think, yeah.
So it might
Well,
be,
In Monona.
okay.
I think it's higher in Madison, or wider.
I'm good.
You good? I have a question about the kayak launch. So, in the previous iteration, which is to say, when it was you guys in Rutabaga, Rutabaga had, a sloping lawn, basically, to launch boats. But there was always the understanding that it was also a public launch, and people frequently would come down and use that launch in addition to those of us that worked for Rutabaga. So my question is, as it relates to this, I never understood whether that was just something that Rutabaga wanted to do because they're a kayak shop and they wanted to be nice to people who wanted to launch there, or if it was something that was actually an agreement between you guys and Jeff Weedman, who owned the property, that it would be public, or if there was some sort of row there, or what, or
I can't speak to any agreement that Rutabaga had with the city, but we didn't have any agreement with them.
Okay, there was nothing with the city, so,
Having-
yeah.
My recollection is added by Rutabaga, and then when they did it, they asked the city if they could put that soft surface over the pass so that they could drag them out, but it was something when we approved Rutabaga that they wanted to add for their test
They
kayaking.
wanted
Yes.
public, they
Well,
wanted
they,
public
they
access.
said, them, they said, sure, the public can come use it, because it's a public boardwalk.
Right.
So it almost had to be accessible, but is it still there?
I don't know what,
I don't know if it's there either.
I don't think it's probably there. But I'm just saying that's something that you should think about, because people are used to dropping into that pond, the public is used to dropping into that pond, and whether or not, putting a launch there, and depending on where it's located, whether or not you want the public, I don't know. I mean, the boardwalk's obviously gonna be public, yes?
It is, it's a public easement that goes up through there for public
Right.
use. That's the whole spirit of the boardwalk to begin with, so
Okay.
barring someone showing that we have a liability issue or some other logistical issue, I would think we would want it to be
You would
as
want it to
public
be
as
there.
possible.
Okay. Sorry for that, yeah.
Just two other things. For consideration, think about if there's anywhere you could put a bench or two along the sidewalk, because you don't have any outdoor space for residents, but if someone's out there walking their dog and they get a phone call or something, they want to sit down, or or sit and just, it's a nice
Sure.
day out. So being at ground is something that people enjoy. And then the circulation, Doug, you had a comment in your staff report about the loading, deliveries, rideshare. Did you have an idea for where specifically you would, want delivery trucks to park, or Ubers or whatever? You have the parking that you wanted in the front of the building, but none of that was specifically designated for those purposes?
Yeah, we don't have any space specifically designated. Ultimately, once that that parking lot in between the two buildings, would be a logical point for the second building. first building's lobby fronts out to the north onto the street. So there's a limited possibility unless they, load off the street, they'll have to come over to the right side of the building. But there's pedestrian connection there, they can go up the ramp.
With 125 units, Amazon's gonna live
Yeah,
at
we're
your
we're familiar.
building.
That's a whole nother challenge, by the way, the whole package acceptance thing and that sort of thing. We've tried it several different ways. The way we have it now is one centralized location that works into our electronic access control. And so it's really one big room. It's a big room, and we have another one programmed here. Because, that's operationally a really big thing. Not only to be able to handle, but for tenants as well, In fact, the system we have up in Grandview actually notifies when they receive one, which is even now becoming kind of a moot point because typically Amazon's already told them that there's a package there. But there's access control in the room, and it makes it really, really convenient for the drivers to come in. They really don't have to sort anything. They just come in and go, here.
Seems like it would be, if that's off the lobby in the front, seems like it would be good if the delivery truck could park up front, just to be quick.
Yeah.
So having a designated loading space in the front.
Sure, operation, I think that makes sense.
Okay, anything else?
You just got a couple of retaining walls that I think need fences.
Oh.
2 of them on phase 1.
Anything else? Do I have a motion?
Move approval with finding of fact 1 and 2, reword finding of fact 3 to the fact that we're requiring 60 stalls of dedicated parking available next door for this. Conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1 through 17 is written. Condition 18, that the Plan Commission may require more parking, reduce units, or both during approval of Phase 2. 19, 20, 21 is written. 22, that curb and gutter or other method shall be used to protect the building at the underground parking entry, the driveway along that feeds underground parking entry. 23, to add terrace trees. 22 was approval by staff. 23, terrace trees to be added, approval by staff. 24, replicate condition 4 on the GDP. 25, that there's a kayak launch with approval by staff. 26, site signage, approval by staff. 27, revised electrical plan, go back to approval by staff. 28, the benches, approval by staff. And 29, the retaining wall fences, approval by staff.
Second.
I have a
Okay, discussion.
Yeah.
The site signage one, you'll have your regular signage, but what I'm most worried about is that he's gonna prove probably that if you don't put it in now, you may have the responsibility to put a no left turn sign up in the public right away where you come out onto Broadway for certain hours. I cannot imagine Public Works will require it for the whole time, but if it becomes an issue, but somehow it's gotta be into that, and that's, other than that, it's gonna be stop signs, do not enter, things like that.
Yeah.
Is there any of those others you have any question?
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right,
Thank you very much.
I think that's it. Thank you. With that, we're going to move to number 8. Reports of staff and commission members, 8A. Reports.
quick update. CDA, this project will be going to CDA tomorrow night for kind of a second discussion with them, updated financials. There will be a TIF request of the city as well. So that will be discussed at CDA tomorrow.
What's being discussed?
There will be a TIF request for the River Place project.
Okay.
That will be going to CDA tomorrow for their second, kind of their second discussion.
Okay, anything else on this list?
Couple upcoming items, zoning permits expected for the April 14th meeting, coming back to our normal schedule, the first meeting of the month. Nothing else.
Okay, I would just say that, as my last meeting on plan will be on April 14th, I would very much like it if this group would join me in a adult beverage after the meeting. I've been on since 2018, so it's, and we've done, I mean, I know it doesn't come close to Chris. Or probably Rob. How many years have you been?
Well, Chris has been on since the war of
Close to
1812.
11?
That was tonight.
10 or 11?
10 or 11? So yeah, so Rob's been on a really long time too. Anyway,
Well, is the meeting going to be 3 hours long?
No.
Okay.
yeah.
I can guarantee that.
Okay, and any plan commission requests for information? Yeah, Chris.
First one, of course, when I was over looking at the Mexican restaurant site, I drove through everything else, and Floor and Decor never really fixed those islands. If you remember, they're supposed to have grass or bushes, and they just full of bark mulch, except for a couple by the building. So they're not in compliance. Question, what are all the piles of dirt doing on the WPS parking lot?
I was wondering.
They're on the
that
parking
myself.
lot, they're burying light poles, they're tearing the heck out of the parking lot. It's being destroyed. What's going on?
It's a tee box.
No, it's actually north of where, the golf place is.
I know.
It's a good question. I do not have the answer right now.
Where did it come from?
Huge dirt piles.
Like, is there a hole somewhere?
It's like 8 or
Not here, so they're hauling it in from off-site,
No way.
and destroying the parking lot, piling it in the parking lot, piling it up against the light poles and everything. It's the darndest thing.
Sure it's not
So they're waiting for a hole,
Maybe they're waiting for a hole, I don't know.
right?
Maybe they've got inside track on something at, what?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought, okay.
No, I haven't seen it.
There's no erosion control around it. is
Yeah,
there?
they've got a
Is
silt
there?
sock all the way
Okay,
around it.
all
It's
right.
on the blacktop, and they got a silt sock around it.
Super weird.
I do not have more information.
Okay, and then one more question, or actually comment. Like for the Mexican restaurant tonight, took me a while to figure out what building it was in because there was no location or anything to tell us. And it's nice if you're not on your computer to have some, hey, this is in the strip mall up at Southtown or whatever. So it took a little, because by the address, I don't know where 29 or whatever it was is.
That's good feedback.
So most of the time the applicant gives you that, but if it doesn't, just, if you can give us just a clue,
That sounds good.
thank you.
I have a question too, I'm sorry. I went to Ellie's for breakfast and it was very difficult to find a parking spot because apparently there's used car sales over there now.
What?
Where?
There's the detailing store that was approved for a couple.
There was a lot
Okay.
and it was hard to find parking.
Mhm. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. And I thought, do
Is
we
it
have a
associated?
used car lot over here? It was in the back, but then also filling up like where the filling station is.
Okay.
So,
They were for sale, or
Yeah.
they were just cars?
I'll look into that.
Okay.
I would just have one thing too, which is, El Gallo, has taken off. It's a huge hit. Prince of the
What
What
El
has?
Gallo, the Mexican restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Where,
where
Edo
Edo's
Garden
was?
used to be.
Mhm.
Where Edo used to be, it's really taken off. It's packed every night.
Right.
If you've haven't been in there, it looks fantastic on the inside. And it may be a small thing, but it's irritating me. The signage over the door, they never painted the background under the signage. So it just looks like crap during the day.
Yeah, I see that. It still says Edo. You can still tell.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I assume now that the weather is improving and it's getting warmer, it's easier to paint, but it just, it's hard to actually read the sign, and it looks terrible.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that that was not what we approved. Okay? Anything else? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourned.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you want to know about Aspen?
No, it was the way you presented it.
It was like 3 weeks ago, Doug, so, maybe they were just